Beneath the desert sky, where the night breathes cool and the sand shivers under a blanket of silver light, the pyramids rise like silent guardians of eternity. They stand against the wind, against the sun, against the shifting centuries themselves. Their edges catch the moonlight as if carved from frozen beams of starlight, and their shadows stretch across the desert like the fingers of an ancient god. For thousands of years, travelers have stopped in their presence and felt their hearts grow still. Some whisper prayers, others touch the stone as though it might answer, but all feel the same thing, the unmistakable weight of a secret that has never been fully told. The Great Pyramid of Giza, tallest and oldest of them all, has watched more than 40 centuries drift past. It was already ancient when Rome was new. It was old before Alexander dreamed of conquest. It stood before the world learned to count its years in a common calendar. And yet, for all our science, for all our books, for all the voices that tried to explain it, the pyramid still gazes back in silence. We are told a story, a neat story, that it was built by a mighty pharaoh, Khufu, and that his people, tens of thousands of laborers, sweating under the desert sun, cut and carried the stones, stacking them one upon another until the monument was complete. That is the story you find in classrooms and encyclopedia. But when you stand before it, when your hand rests against the impossible smoothness of its ancient stone, the story trembles. The seams in the narrative widen. Questions seep through like water through cracks. How did they cut granite with tools softer than the stone itself? How did they move blocks that weigh as much as 40 tons, dragging them across miles of sand, lifting them hundreds of feet into the sky? And why, above all, why does the pyramid seem older than the very civilization that claimed it? Listen carefully, and you may hear echoes hidden in its silence, legends that whisper of forgotten civilizations, of secret ores, of knowledge handed down from stars or drowned continents. Historians deny these tales, but still they circulate, carried on the desert wind, written in the margins of ancient texts, traced in the patterns of constellations above. The pyramids are not just monuments of stone, they are riddles in plain sight. They are vast doors sealed not with locks, but with time, and every answer we try to force upon them seems too small, too fragile for what they truly are. So tonight, let us walk together into their shadow. Slowly, gently, as though stepping into a dream. Let us ask the forbidden questions, the ones that linger when official explanations fall short. Who really built the pyramids? What knowledge did they guard? And why does it feel as if someone long ago went to great lengths to cover the truth? The desert waits. The stars above are bright with remembrance, and the stones themselves are listening, heavy with a silence that feels almost alive. And so our story begins not with certainty, but with a question older than history itself. Imagine standing at the edge of the Nile as the first light of dawn begins to seep across the horizon. The river is wide, dark as ink in the night, but under the touch of the rising sun, it slowly transforms into a mirror of liquid gold. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of wet reeds and the musk of fertile soil. Water birds stir, wings brushing against the stillness, and fishermen in narrow boats begin to push away from the shore, their oars dipping into the quiet current. It is here, along this eternal river, that the pyramids rise from the desert's edge. They do not belong to the desert alone, nor to the fertile floodplain of the Nile, but to the meeting of both worlds where life and death, green and gold, water and sand converge. Egypt itself was a gift of this river. Without the Nile, there would be no Egypt. Each year, the floodwaters came, carrying with them dark silt from the heart of Africa, laying down a new skin upon the earth. Farmers planted wheat and barley, flax and vegetables in the rich fields left behind by the river's retreat. In the distance, herds grazed where the green gave way to sand. Life clung to the river like a necklace strung across the throat of the desert, and just beyond the cultivated land lay the silence. The desert stretched outward, endless and golden, its dunes shifting like the surface of a restless sea. To the Egyptians, the fertile land was Kemet, the Black Land, for the dark soil of the Nile. The desert beyond was Deshret, the Red Land, realm of heat, death, and eternity. The pyramids stood on the very threshold, built in stone, as if to say, here is where the two worlds meet, where life gives way to eternity. The geography of Giza was not chosen by chance. Beneath the limestone plateau ran bedrock strong enough to support a structure of unimaginable weight. From its edges, the view commanded the great river, the fertile valley, and the shifting sands beyond, and above, always above, the stars arched in a sky so clear, so vast, that it seemed to pulse with secrets. The Egyptians did not look at the stars as we do now, distant, cold, remote. For them, the stars were alive. They were gods, ancestors, guides. The belt of Orion marked Osiris, lord of the underworld. Sirius, the brightest star, was sacred to Isis, his eternal companion, and the slow, steady rising of these stars, season after season, gave order to time itself. The pyramids were not random piles of stone, they were set upon this plateau as instruments tuned to the heavens, aligned with precise stars, shadows, and solstices. Their location was a dialogue between earth and sky. When we place ourselves in their time, when the first stones were cut and dragged, when the first blocks rose into place, Egypt was already a land of great kings. Dynasties rose and fell like the rhythm of the river. Pharaohs claimed divinity, their crowns blazing with the red and white of Upper and Lower Egypt. Priests kept the sacred calendars. Scribes bent over papyrus scrolls, recording the flow of taxes, the lists of offerings, the names of the gods. In the bustling streets of Memphis, traders bargained over cedar wood, turquoise, gold, and lapis lazuli brought from faraway lands. But beneath all this noise, beneath the marketplace and the ritual, was the quiet certainty of eternity. Death was not an end, it was a passage. Life was but a short journey toward the vast beyond. And the pyramids, those colossal mountains of stone, were not mere tombs, but gateways. Think of the scale. The Great Pyramid once stood nearly 480 feet tall, its sides gleaming in the sun, sheathed in polished white limestone that reflected the desert light like a mirror. From miles away, it would have seemed as though a frozen beam of sunlight had been planted into the ground. At its base, each side stretched more than 750 feet, longer than two city blocks. The blocks themselves numbered in the millions, each weighing between 2 and 40 tons. The precision with which they were cut and placed remains staggering even today. Some joints are so tight that not even a blade of grass can slip between them. The geography of its setting magnifies its mystery. Stand at its base, and the desert hums with heat. Look outward, and you see the Nile winding like a serpent through the valley, a thread of green and an ocean of sand. Turn, and you see the horizon, where the desert swallows the sun in waves of red and gold. Look upward, and the sky opens, filled with constellations that shift with an order older than kings. It is as though the pyramid is not simply resting on the earth, but stitched into the very fabric of creation, rooted in stone below, aligned with stars above. To understand the pyramid, you must understand this meeting of elements, stone and sand, water and ski, earth and eternity. The builders, or whoever they truly were, chose this place with the precision beyond accident. They placed their monuments at the boundary between the living land and the land of silence, between the predictable flood of the Nile and the changeless barrenness of the desert, between the fleeting breath of mortal men and the endless gaze of the stars. And in this choice of setting lies another question, one that haunts scholars and dreamers alike. Was the pyramid built for a king, or was the king merely a caretaker of something older? Because here is the paradox. By the time Khufu supposedly raised the Great Pyramid, Egypt already stood upon centuries of history. Temples had been built, tombs had been carved, cities had risen and thrived, yet nothing before or after was ever built with such perfection, such endurance. It is as though a singular burst of knowledge, a sudden flowering of impossible skill, erupted in one moment and then was lost again, never to be repeated. The land itself seems to conspire in the mystery. The limestone quarries lie nearby, but the granite beams within the king's chamber came from Aswan, 500 miles to the south. To move them would have required boats, ropes, ramps, and more, an undertaking so vast that it feels less like construction and more like a rite, as if the land and its people were summoned to perform a ritual of stone, binding earth to sky in an act both sacred and secret. When you look at Egypt, not as a modern tourist, but with the eyes of those who lived then, the landscape shifts. The desert is not empty, it is eternal. The river is not just water, it is life reborn each year. The stars are not distant suns, they are gods, immortal and watchful. The pyramids, rising at this crossroads, are not inert monuments, but voices, silent, yes, but eloquent in their silence. And so, before we search for who built them, before we follow the trail of legends and the footprints of forgotten civilizations, we must pause here in the land that cradled them, in the meeting of river and desert, sky and earth, man and eternity, because the pyramids cannot be understood apart from their home. They belong to Egypt not as artifacts belong to a museum, but as mountains belong to the earth itself. Tonight, as we walk through this story, keep this image in your mind: the desert horizon glowing with sunset, the Nile gleaming with light, and the pyramids standing at the edge of all things immovable, mysterious, and impossibly old. It is from this place, from this land, that the mystery deepens. The land cradles the question, the river carries it, the stars whisper it, and from this setting, we must step closer into the heart of the enigma who, beyond the pharaohs, beyond the scribes, beyond the official stories, truly raised these eternal mountains of stone in the neat lines of textbook. The name is Khufu. In the shadowed corners of legend, he is Cheops, a king of Egypt's fourth dynasty who ruled more than 4,500 years ago. A mortal man who, according to official chronicles, summoned the labor of a nation to raise his eternal house of stone. Khufu, they say, was not beloved. Herodotus, the Greek historian writing 2,000 years after his reign, painted him as cruel and tyrannical, a man who closed temples and drove his people into misery to serve his ambition. Yet other records, fragmentary and scarce, tell a quieter story of a king who worshipped the sun god Ra, who honored the cycles of heaven, and who left behind not statues or inscriptions of his greatness, but a monument so vast that it swallowed all memory of the man himself. That is one of the strangest truths the Great Pyramid. Supposedly, Khufu's tomb holds not a single carving of his name inside its walls. No murals proclaim his triumphs. No texts record his vision. The king himself is silent within the very structure that is said to define him. Later graffiti scratched on nearby stones bear his name, but whether those marks are genuine records or later attempts to anchor the pyramid to a familiar pharaoh remains uncertain. The absence is glaring. A monument of such impossible scale, and no voice of its supposed master preserved within. So who, then, were the true central figures behind its creation? To glimpse them, we must step beyond Khufu and into the shadows of his age. Egypt was ruled not only by kings, but by priesthoods, powerful, secretive groups who kept the sacred knowledge of the gods. The priests of Heliopolis, keepers of the solar cult, traced the movement of the stars with a precision that rivals our own astronomy. The priests of Memphis guarded the mysteries of Ptah, the divine craftsman, and in every temple, scribes and initiates studied texts older than kings, papyri whispering of forgotten times. What if the pyramid was less the vision of a single ruler and more the culmination of hidden knowledge held by such orders? Imagine a circle of high priests, their white robes brushing against temple floors, lit by flickering oil lamps. Imagine them studying the night sky, measuring the paths of Orion and Sirius, aligning their sacred geometry with the curve of the horizon. Imagine them whispering to Khufu, telling him that by raising this structure, he would become more than a man. He would step into the cycle of eternity, joined forever with the stars. Perhaps Khufu was not the architect, but the patron, the mask beneath which deeper forces worked. And yet, even deeper shadows lie beneath. For there are whispers not from Egypt alone, but from across the world, that the pyramid reflects knowledge far older than Khufu, older than Egypt itself. In the deserts of Arabia, Bedouin stories speak of vanished peoples who built monuments before the flood. In the tales of Plato, there is Atlantis, a lost world of advanced builders, drowned by the sea but remembered in stone. In esoteric traditions passed down through secret societies, the Great Pyramid is not a tomb, but a library, a vessel of hidden wisdom, encoded in angles and proportions, designed by those who possessed a science too vast for our remembering. If this is so, then who were these architects? Some point to an ancient brotherhood, keepers of a primordial knowledge, bound by oaths that stretch across millennia. The names given to them change with time. The followers of Horus, the builders of the first time, the sons of God, always. They appear in fragments, legends, inscriptions, half-erased carvings that suggest the presence of men who were more than men, moving silently in the dawn of history. The Egyptian texts themselves speak of Zep Tepi the first time, a golden age when the gods walked upon the earth, when knowledge flowed freely between heaven and mankind. According to temple carvings, it was in this age that the foundations of civilization were laid. Agriculture, writing, astronomy, architecture, all gifts from the gods bestowed upon chosen men. Could it be that the pyramids were not inventions of Khufu's time, but echoes of this first time, that the priests and kings merely followed blueprints handed down from an era long vanished? Khufu's role then may have been not as a tyrant forcing stone upon stone, but as a figurehead chosen to preside over a project too immense for memory. His name may have been attached to the pyramid because history needs names, needs someone to bear responsibility for the unthinkable. But behind his figure might have stood the true architect's orders, whose knowledge was old even then, whose hands and minds carried out a design drawn from ages beyond history. And yet, one cannot dismiss the possibility that Khufu himself was more than we imagine. Pharaohs were not merely kings, they were gods in flesh, intermediaries between the mortal and the eternal. When Khufu gazed upon the stars, perhaps he did so not as a man, but as a living Horus, bound to cosmic duty. Perhaps he truly believed or truly knew that by raising this monument, he would bind Egypt to eternity. But then comes the troubling silence again. Why no inscriptions inside? Why no funerary goods? No golden sarcophagus? No painted walls? If the Great Pyramid was a tomb, it was the strangest tomb ever conceived, silent, empty, geometric, almost mathematical in its perfection. Not a house for the dead, but a machine for something else. If it was a machine, then who designed it? The organization behind the pyramid may not have been a single priesthood or a single king, but a convergence, rulers lending authority, priests lending knowledge, laborers lending strength, and perhaps, if the more daring theories are true, echoes of an even older people lending designs that had survived floods and fires of forgotten ages. And perhaps there was reason for secrecy. If knowledge from before Egypt, before the pharaohs, truly survived, it could not be spoken openly. It had to be guarded, hidden, clothed in ritual. To the common man, the pyramid was a tomb, a symbol of a king's power. To those within the priesthood, perhaps it was a temple aligned with stars, a ladder for the soul. To those even deeper in the circle, perhaps it was something else entirely, a vessel of knowledge, a cipher in stone, concealing truths the world was not yet ready to face. When you stand before the Great Pyramid, you feel not the personality of a man, but the presence of an organization, something collective, vast and faceless, like the desert wind. It has no single voice, yet its force is undeniable. Khufu's name is remembered because it gives history a focal point, but the pyramid itself whispers of a multitude, hands beyond count, wills beyond number, and perhaps minds we cannot name. This is why the question still stirs the heart. Who really built the pyramids? A king remembered in fragments, a priesthood guarding the wisdom of stars, a secret order carrying whispers from the first time, or a civilization erased, leaving behind its memory in stone. What we know is that behind Khufu's shadow stands something larger than kingship, something that transcends dynasties, something that still lingers, stone upon stone in the desert night. And so the figure of Khufu fades, becoming less a man than a mask. Behind him, the veiled architects still wait, their names forgotten, their designs enduring. From this central mystery, the absence of the builder's true voice, our story moves deeper into the fog of legend and the echo of ages. For if Khufu was only the mask, then where did the design itself come from? What ancient source first drew the lines that the pyramid follows so precisely, as though etched into eternity itself? The desert wind does not answer, the stones remain silent, and yet Their silence feels like a hand tugging us onward toward origins more ancient than memory. In the temples of Egypt, carved in hieroglyphs that shimmer like frozen prayers, there is a phrase that returns again and again. Zep Tepi the first time. To the ancient priests, it was not metaphor, it was memory, a time when the gods walked among men, when wisdom was given as a gift, when the foundations of civilization were laid not by trial and error, but by inheritance. They spoke of a golden age when the land was new, when the Nile flowed under skies untouched by time, when the first kings were not men at all, but divine rulers, Osiris, Isis, Thoth, Horus. These were not distant deities in the way we think of gods. Now they were described as beings of flesh and presence, who ruled upon the earth and taught men the arts of building, writing, and measuring the stars. And when the first time ended, when chaos returned, when floods and fire reshaped the earth, these gods withdrew. But the priests whispered that not all was lost. Some fragments of their knowledge, some relics of their power were preserved, hidden in temples, locked in rituals, etched into stone, or perhaps raised into monuments so vast that no flood, no fire, no war could erase them. What if the pyramids are not simply tombs, nor even monuments of a single dynasty, but echoes of this Zep Tepi markers of knowledge, older than Egypt itself? The legend spread beyond Egypt. The Greeks told of Atlantis, a shining world, radiant with knowledge, drowned by the sea. The Mesopotamians spoke of great floods and of sages who emerged afterward to teach humanity once more. Across the globe, from the Mayan jungles to the mountains of India, stories echo the same refrain: there was a time before time, when great builders raised structures aligned with stars, and when disaster waters rising, skies darkening, brought it all to ruin. Could the pyramids be survivors of this forgotten chapter? Even the stones seem to hint at it. The erosion patterns at the base of the Sphinx suggest not merely the kiss of wind and sand, but the carving of ancient rain, rain in a desert that has been dry for thousands of years. If the Sphinx was carved in that wetter age, then it stands older than the dynasties, older than the pharaohs, older than memory itself. And if the Sphinx belongs to the first time, could the pyramids too? There is a haunting quality to this thought that Khufu and his dynasty did not build the Great Pyramid from nothing, but inherited it, perhaps repaired it, perhaps claimed it as their own. That what we see today is not the creation of one reign, but the survival of a monument far older. The priests guarded these secrets closely. To the common people, the pyramids were the resting places of kings, the ladders to eternity, but within the inner sanctums, the myths were told differently. They spoke of Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, who carried the book of knowledge, a text so powerful that it could bend the forces of the universe. They spoke of Osiris, whose body was cut into pieces and scattered, yet who was restored through the devotion of Isis, teaching that death itself could be undone. They spoke of the stars as gateways, not distant fires, and of monuments built to mirror heaven upon earth. And then there are the stories of the Shemsu Hor, the followers of Horus, semi-divine beings remembered as the rulers of Egypt before the pharaohs. They appear in fragments of king lists carved into ancient stone, stretching the timeline of Egyptian kingship back thousands upon thousands of years before what modern historians allow. Were these mythical rulers, or echoes of a forgotten lineage? Were they men of flesh who lived impossibly long lives, or guardians of the knowledge passed down from the first time? The more one listens, the more the lines blur between legend and history. When the pyramid texts, the oldest religious writings in the world, were first translated, they revealed not myths of men seeking gods, but instructions carefully laid out for the soul of the king to ascend into the stars. They read like a manual of eternity, written in symbols older than the language itself. The pyramids, then, may not be houses for corpses, but vessels for transformation. And yet, if the pyramids were truly echoes of a first time, why does the official story deny it? Why are they bound so tightly to Khufu and his dynasty? Perhaps because memory is fragile. Civilizations fall, libraries burn, dynasties rewrite the past to anchor their own power, and a monument with no master is dangerous. It suggests that men are not the pinnacle of history, but inheritors of something vaster. The legends grow even more unsettling when one looks beyond Egypt. In Mexico, the Pyramid of the Sun rises at Teotihuacan, aligned with the stars. In Cambodia, Angkor Wat maps the heavens in stone. In Peru, the walls of Sacsayhuaman bear blocks so massive and so perfectly fitted that no blade of metal can slip between them. Different lands, different ages, but the same themes, monuments too great for the tools of their supposed builders, aligned with the sky, wrapped in myths of gods and forgotten ages. It is as if a single memory has echoed across the globe that once there was a knowledge capable of shaping stone and star into harmony, and that knowledge has since been lost or hidden. Some whisper that this knowledge was celestial, that beings from the heavens, whether gods or something else, descended in the first time and left behind instructions encoded in stone. Others argue for civilizations erased by flood, survivors scattering across the world, carrying fragments of memory and architecture. Still others believe the pyramids are not inheritances of the past at all, but deliberate attempts to preserve knowledge for the future time capsules of eternity, waiting for us to listen. Consider the geometry. The Great Pyramid's base is aligned within a fraction of a degree to true north, something we ourselves would struggle to achieve with modern instruments. Its proportions encode the value of pound, the length of the solar year, even the curvature of the earth. Was this coincidence, or was it the deliberate embedding of universal knowledge into stone knowledge, too important to lose? So it was hidden not in fragile scrolls or spoken word, but in the only thing that could survive millennia, the mountain of eternity. Legends swirl around its hidden chambers. Too, ancient texts hint at a hall of records, a secret chamber buried beneath the sands, where the wisdom of the first time is preserved. Seers and explorers have sought it for centuries, convinced that somewhere beneath the paws of the Sphinx or within the heart of the Great Pyramid lies a library not of books, but of stone tablets, crystal codices, or carvings that hold the truth of our forgotten origins. No one has found it, at least, not openly, but the belief persists, perhaps because the pyramids themselves, silent and immovable, seem to insist upon a secret. When you listen to the legends, you find yourself drifting not into fantasy, but into possibility. The pyramid becomes more than a tomb, more than a monument. It becomes a message from whom we do not yet know, for whom, perhaps us. And so the story deepens not only who built the pyramids, but when. Not only when, but why. Was it a king ensuring his immortality? Was it a priesthood encoding star maps in stone? Or was it something older, an echo of Zep Tepi, a whisper from the first time? When gods and men walk together under the same stars, the desert keeps its silence. The stones offer no confession. But the legends do not die. They rise like the stars each night, reminding us that what we think we know is but a thin veil draped over mysteries far older than memory. And so we are left with the image, the pyramids rising not from Khufu's hand alone, but from a lineage of forgotten builders, stretching back into the first time, builders whose names are lost, but whose work still commands the horizon. Builders whose secrets we still chase, across centuries, across legends, across the sands that cover eternity. The legend is not an ending, it is a beckoning, a call to look deeper, to peel away the layers of neat explanations, and to ask again the question we began with: who really built the pyramids? For if they are truly echoes of the first time, then the story of humanity is older, stranger, and more mysterious than we dare imagine. And from this golden haze of origins and legends, our path, our path leads onward into the story of power. For if forgotten builders raised these mountains of stone, then how did their knowledge pass into the hands of kings? How did a memory of the first time become a throne for the pharaohs? The answer waits in the rise of dynasties, in the gathering of men who would claim the wisdom of eternity as their own. And so the sands shift, and our story turns toward the rise to power. The Nile flowed as it always had, its rhythm a heartbeat older than kings. Each flood, each retreat left the land renewed, and in that renewal, the pharaohs claimed their legitimacy. For Egypt's rulers, the river was proof of divine favor. It rose when the gods willed, it fed the soil, and it bound the land in unity. Whoever controlled the Nile controlled Egypt, and whoever claimed to speak for the gods who governed its floods ruled not only the earth, but the heavens. By the time of the fourth dynasty, this idea of kingship had ripened into something immense. The pharaoh was no longer merely a man wearing crowns, he was Horus in flesh, Ra's chosen, the bridge between eternity and time. His breath carried the blessings of the gods. His death was not an ending, but a passage into divine union. He was, in every sense, a god walking among mortals, and his monuments had to reflect this. The dynasties before Khufu had experimented with form. King Djoser had raised the step pyramid at Saqqara, a layered staircase of stone that reached toward heaven like frozen steps of light. Sneferu, Khufu's father, had labored to perfect the shape, building the bent pyramid with its strange change of angle, and then the red pyramid, smooth-sided, majestic, a true forerunner of what was to come. Each attempt was not just an architectural project, but a statement that the king's power stretched beyond life into eternity itself. When Khufu ascended the throne, the stage was set. Egypt was prosperous, its bureaucracy efficient, its priesthoods influential. Trade routes stretched across deserts and seas, bringing cedar from Lebanon, gold from Nubia, turquoise from Sinai. The land was stable, the people numerous, the labor force immense. All forces converged into a singular possibility, the creation of something that would outlast time. And so, according to the official story, Khufu ordered the Great Pyramid to be built. But if this were only about a king's ego, why reach such an impossible scale? Why push stone against stone until mountains bowed in comparison? The answer may lie not in ambition alone, but in power both earthly and hidden. To build such a monument was to gather Egypt itself under one vision. Tens of thousands of laborers were said to have toiled, but evidence suggests they were not slaves in chains, as once thought, but organized workers housed in barracks, fed with bread and beer, their lives bound to the sacred labor of raising eternity. Farmers came when the Nile's floods left their fields idle, offering their strength as part of a cycle older than written history, men lending their bodies so that the king could lend his soul to heaven. But who truly orchestrated this? Was it the king, issuing commands from his palace, or the priesthood, whispering ancient formulas and mapping stars in temple courtyards? Perhaps it was both, the fusion of divine kingship and sacred knowledge into one unstoppable force, for the pyramid was more than stone. It was a message carved into the very landscape that the king was eternal, that Egypt was eternal, that heaven itself could be reached by human hands. To raise the pyramid was to declare that order Mayat had triumphed over chaos, and so long as it stood, the king's power would stand as well. Yet behind this proclamation of order lies a murmur of something stranger, for the pyramid is not only a symbol of power, it is also a vessel of mysteries. Its alignment to true north, to Orion's belt, to Sirius, these were not matters of chance. They required a precision that suggests not only architects of genius, but access to a knowledge beyond their age. Some say the priests of Heliopolis, keepers of the solar cult, held this knowledge, star maps, calendars, the geometry of the cosmos. Others whisper that the knowledge was older still, passed down from forgotten builders who had once raised monuments in the first time. Imagine, then, the rise to power not simply as a political ascent, but as a reclamation. A king taking his place as heir, not only to his father, but to an ancient inheritance buried in stone. Khufu may have worn the double crown of Egypt, but perhaps he also wore a mantle far older, that of the custodian of lost knowledge, the one chosen to manifest it once more in stone. And yet, history is never simple. Power attracts conflict. The more immense the pyramid rose, the more it required from the people. Even if the laborers were not slaves, they were bound to the will of the state, drawn from their homes to toil for years. Temples murmured with prayers, scribes recorded quotas of grain and beer, overseers shouted across ramps of stone, urging the blocks upward. All of Egypt bent beneath the vision. In this bending, power was both affirmed and questioned. Was Khufu loved or feared? Was the pyramid seen as a beacon of eternity,
or a weight upon the people. The Greeks would later remember him as a tyrant, but perhaps this was simply the echo of awe, the memory of a king whose monument was so vast that later generations could not comprehend it without imagining cruelty behind its making. Still, there's his silence where one would expect proclamation. Khufu left few statues, no grand inscriptions, no detailed accounts of his reign. His pyramid, supposedly his tomb, holds no carved boasts of victory, no walls painted with gods receiving him, only bare stone, corridors, chambers, silence, a strange kind of power, a king who erased his voice, leaving only the shape of eternity. And perhaps this silence itself was the point. The pyramid does not speak of Khufu. It speaks of something larger, something beyond kingship. It is less a monument to a man than a monument to mystery itself. This, then, was the rise to power not merely of a king, but of an idea that men could raise stone into eternity, that order could be frozen into form, that heaven could be mirrored on earth, and beneath the surface of that idea lies another, more unsettling, that the knowledge to achieve it was not wholly of their time, that Khufu's rise was not only political, but initiatory, a king stepping into a current of power that flowed from the first time through priests and whispers into his reign. So the pyramid rose, block upon block, aligned to the stars, rooted in the bedrock of eternity. And with it, Khufu's Egypt rose as well, shining at the height of its power, from Memphis to Heliopolis, from the quarries of Aswan to the turquoise mines of Sinai. Egypt's breath gathered into one vast exhalation of stone.
The king stood at its center, yet behind him stood forces older than himself, priesthoods, myths, and perhaps the unseen hands of those forgotten architects who had whispered across the gulf of time. But power, once risen, must always face its own shadow, for as high as the pyramid lifted Egypt into the realm of the gods, so too did it attract envy, doubt, and intrigue. The silence of its walls, the mystery of its design, the enormity of its presence, these gave rise to questions, and questions gave rise to conflict. And so our story drifts forward from the rise of power into the tensions that followed. For no monument, however vast, exists without shadows. No king, however divine, reigns without whispers. And the pyramid, as it reached completion, did not only stand as a beacon, it cast a darkness as well, a darkness of conflicts and intrigues. The sun rose over Egypt in waves of gold.
Morning light spilled across the desert plateau, catching the polished limestone casing of the pyramids, turning them into blinding mirrors of fire. From miles away, travelers on the Nile would see them gleam, floating above the horizon as if suspended between heaven and earth. To approach them was to enter the realm of the divine, a realm where stone was not stone, but light frozen in form. This was the golden age of Egypt's old kingdom, a time when wealth and faith converged into something greater than empire. The land was fertile, nourished by the eternal rhythm of the Nile. The floods came as expected, never too low, never too high. Fields yielded grain enough to feed the people and store surplus for temples. The river carried boats heavy with trade cedar from Byblos, copper from Sinai, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, ebony and ivory from Nubia. In the cities, stone streets hummed with life. Bakers shaped loaves of bread in clay ovens. Potters spun clay into vessels. Weavers worked flax into linen so white yet it shimmered like moonlight on water. At the markets, voices rose in barter, mingling with the bleating of goats and the scent of fish newly drawn from the Nile. Everywhere, the image of the pharaoh was present on seals, on stelae, on the lips of priests who invoked his name in daily prayers. But the pyramid was the true heart of this age. It was not merely a tomb, it was the axis around which the kingdom turned. Its rising form proclaimed that Egypt was eternal, its king divine, its order unshakable. Farmers who carried stones for its construction told their children that they were building eternity. Priests who studied the alignment of its corridors with the stars believed they were preserving the balance of heaven itself. Even the humblest laborer could look at the rising pyramid and know he had touched something greater than himself. In this way, the pyramid was not only the pharaoh's monument, but Egypt's. Its scale bound the nation together. Its silence spoke across social divides. Rich and poor alike saw in it the reflection of a truth larger than any single life, that they were part of a cycle older than memory, stretching from the first time. into eternity. The Golden Age was marked not only by prosperity, but by harmony. Art flourished in temples and tombs. Sculptors carved statues of pharaohs and priests with a grace that captured not only form, but spirit. Painters adorned walls with images of daily life, fishing, hunting, banquets preserved in colors that even now, after millennia, remain vivid. Music drifted from harps and flutes in palace courtyards, blending with the chants of temple hymns. Religion infused every breath of life. To the Egyptians, there was no division between sacred and mundane. Every act from sowing grain to pouring beer was a reflection of Mayat, the cosmic order.
And the pharaoh was the living embodiment of Maat. As long as he ruled, the balance held. As long as the pyramid gleamed in the sun, Egypt was aligned with the heavens. The court of Khufu and of the kings who followed radiated with this aura of power. In the palaces of Memphis, priests offered daily rituals to Ra, the sun god. Scribes recorded omens, aligning the events of the kingdom with the movements of the stars. Nobles dined on roasted fowl, bread, and beer sweetened with dates, reclining on carved chairs of ebony inlaid with ivory. Servants poured perfumed oils, and musicians plucked delicate melodies that lingered in the air like incense. Yet beneath the splendor, there was also discipline, a rigid structure that bound society as tightly as stone bound the pyramid. The bureaucracy was vast, officials collected taxes, supervised labor, recorded harvests, and ensured the flow of offerings to temples.
The priesthood wielded immense influence, guiding not only rituals, but the very worldview of the people. And through it all, the pyramid stood as the ultimate symbol of that order, unchanging, perfect, eternal. This harmony extended into the cosmos. To the Egyptians, the sky was a mirror of the earth, and the earth a mirror of the sky. The pyramids were placed not randomly, but in alignment with Orion's belt, with Sirius, with the circumpolar stars that never set the imperishables, symbols of eternity. To gaze upon the pyramids was to gaze upon heaven itself, brought down to earth in stone. The Golden Age was not without awe, nor without unease. For even as the pyramids proclaimed eternity, they also whispered of mysteries unsolved. Farmers wondered at the size of the blocks they carried. Overseers marveled at the precision with which they were placed. Priests traced the lines of the stars and felt the echo of something older than Egypt.
And travelers from distant lands stood dumbstruck before the gleaming mountains, whispering that such monuments could not be the work of men alone. Yet the people believed, or chose to believe, that their king held the key, that Khufu and those who came after him carried in their hearts the wisdom of the gods, that the pyramids rose because the pharaoh's will was aligned with the divine.
And so long as the pyramids gleamed, the Golden Age endured. But harmony is fragile. Prosperity depends on balance, and balance is always threatened. The very monument that bound Egypt together also carried the seeds of division. The labor demanded was immense, the resources consumed were vast, and the silence of the pyramid's chambers, with their empty walls and enigmatic passages, left questions lingering even then.
Was this truly a tomb or something else? Was the king preserving his soul or concealing a truth too great to speak? As Egypt basked in its golden age, shadows gathered at the edges, priests whispered of hidden meanings, nobles measured their own power against that of the king, and in the hearts of the people, awe mingled with unease. For while the pyramid proclaimed order, it also stirred the suspicion that not all was as it seemed. Still, for a time, the illusion held. Egypt shone like the sun on the casing stones of the Great Pyramid. Its fields were fertile, its people strong, its gods near. The Golden Age was a vision of eternity, made flesh fragile, fleeting, and yet unforgettable. And from this brilliance, the story turns, for light always casts a shadow, and the greater the monument, the deeper the darkness it conceals. Amna. As the Golden Age reached its height, conflicts and intrigues began to stir faint at first, then louder, like distant thunder rolling across the desert. The pyramid, silent and immovable, would soon become the center of questions that could not be silenced. The Great Pyramid gleamed in the desert sun, but its brilliance masked a quiet unrest. For while the people gazed in awe and the priests proclaimed its holiness, Beneath the surface of Egypt's order ran rivers of rivalry, ambition, and whispered suspicion. Even eternity, when clothed in stone, is not free of intrigue. At the heart of the kingdom, the priesthood of Heliopolis watched the pyramid with solemn pride and unease. They were keepers of the solar cult, guardians of the secrets of Ra, the god who traveled the sky by day and descended into the underworld by night. For them, the pyramid was more than a tomb. It was a symbol of the sun's rebirth, a stairway by which the king could ascend to join the circumpolar stars.
Yet as the stones rose higher, the priests of Memphis, devotees of Ptah, the god of craftsmen and creation, whispered that the design was theirs, that the secrets of geometry and stonework belonged not to Heliopolis, but to them. Thus, even among the priests, there were rival claims whose god held the true authority behind the pyramid's rising form. To whom did the monument truly belong? The pharaoh's silence for Khufu left few inscriptions. Few words of his own deepened the rivalry. Each priesthood claimed to be the true interpreter of his will. Each whispered that their wisdom was the key to the eternal machine of stone. Nobles, too, began to measure their power against the pyramid, for while it drew resources from every corner of Egypt, not all shared equally in its glory. Overseers who commanded laborers gained prestige, their names carved into records. Governors of provinces who sent supplies swelled with pride, reminding their people that they too had built eternity. And yet, resentment brewed. Why should the labor of thousands serve only one man's afterlife? Why should Egypt's wealth be consumed by stone that held no grain, no gold, no shelter in the taverns of workers' villages? Murmurs rose like smoke. Some men drank deeply of beer and boasted of their strength, proud to have moved blocks that touched the sky at sea. Others grumbled of aching backs and endless toil, wondering aloud whether the gods truly required such suffering. Priests reassured them that they were building not just for the king, but for themselves, for Egypt, for eternity. But whispers spread as fast as desert wind, and whispers are hard to silence. Among the workers themselves, hierarchies formed. Skilled masons looked down upon laborers who hauled stones. Quarrymen who risked their lives cutting blocks from cliffs claimed greater honor than those who dragged them. Overseers enforced order with whips of reed, their strikes echoing against stone ramps.
Even in the shadow of eternity, human rivalries persisted, and in the king's court, intrigue deepened further. Khufu's sons and advisors maneuvered for position, each seeking favor, each hoping to inherit not only the throne, but the aura of eternity bound to the pyramid. Some argued that the work consumed too much of Egypt's strength, that temples went neglected, that distant trade suffered. Others insisted that the pyramid was the very foundation of Egypt's future, that without it, the kingdom would drift into chaos. What lay at the heart of these conflicts was not only ambition, but secrecy. For as the pyramid neared completion, rumors spread of hidden chambers, sealed passages, treasures locked within. Some said the priests themselves vanished into its corridors at night, carrying scrolls of sacred knowledge, depositing them in rooms that would never be opened.
Others whispered that the king had ordered false passages built to confuse intruders, that traps of stone and air would punish any who dared disturb eternity. And then there were the darker tales of rituals performed within the pyramid's rising structure, of priests chanting to the stars, of sacrifices offered in shadowed chambers, of knowledge whispered not in human tongues, but in the language of gods. The people did not speak of such things openly, but fear, once sown, grows roots in silence. The pyramid became both a beacon of unity and a magnet for suspicion. Its walls did not merely rise, they divided. Priests debated its meaning, nobles quarreled over its cost, workers murmured of their suffering, and all the while the monument loomed larger, its silence heavier, its mystery deeper. Even outside Egypt, the pyramid stirred intrigue. Envoys from foreign lands came to see it, their eyes wide, their tongues heavy with wonder. Some carried stories home of a king who could command the impossible, of a people who built mountains from stone. Others whispered more cautiously that such monuments could not be raised by men alone, that Egypt must harbor secrets from the gods themselves, and with such whispers came envy, and envy often births danger. The king himself, Khufu, remained a shadow in all this. No records tell us of his voice, his laughter, his fury. Later Greeks called him cruel, but their words were centuries removed. Perhaps he was harsh, for such a monument required harshness. Perhaps he was wise, cloaked in silence. Perhaps he was neither, or both. In his absence, stories multiplied, each shaped by those who sought to claim his legacy. What is clear is this: the Great Pyramid, even in its birth, was not free of strife. It was a vessel not only of stone and mystery, but of human ambition, rivalry, and suspicion. Its rising form amplified not only the glory of Egypt, but its tensions. The priests quarreled, the nobles schemed, the workers murmured, the foreigners envied, and through it all, the pyramid stood, gleaming in the sun, unmoved by the voices that swirled around it. Yet conflict has a way of ripening into turning points. Intrigue builds like sand carried by the wind until dunes shift and landscapes change. The pyramid was completed, but its silence did not soothe the unrest. If anything, it deepened it, for the questions it raised were larger than the answers Egypt could offer. Was it truly a tomb, or something more? Did it serve a king, or a purpose hidden even from him? Was it the work of men, or of gods, or of knowledge inherited from world long drowned? Such questions cannot remain buried forever. They rise, as surely as the sun rises over the desert. And so, from conflict and intrigue, the story moves toward a threshold. For every age of brilliance meets its turning point, and even the gleaming silence of eternity cannot escape the shifting tides of time. The Great Pyramid would soon stand complete, but completion is not an ending, it is a beginning of new mysteries. For when the last stone was set, when the casing gleamed so bright it hurt the eyes, Egypt did not fall into silence. It entered a new chapter, one marked by events that would alter forever how the pyramid was seen. And thus we walk forward, out of the whispers of intrigue and into the weight of history itself, toward the moment when the pyramid, already mysterious, became even more so. The story now turns to a major event, a turning point that casts new shadows over Egypt's eternal stone. The pyramid was finished. After decades of toil, after countless blocks hauled from quarries, after ramparts of sand and mud brick had risen and fallen, the mountain of eternity stood complete. Its casing stones gleamed like frozen sunlight, its summit kissed the sky, and its sides fell with such precision that their angles nearly erased the line between man's hand and heaven's geometry. The workers' villages quieted, the ramps were dismantled, the scaffolds were removed, the dust of years of labor settled back into the desert wind. Egypt stood in awe before the shining monument of its age. The Great Pyramid, the crown of Khufu's reign, was no longer becoming, it simply was. And yet, in the silence that followed its completion, questions grew louder. For in time, the inevitable came. Khufu died. The pharaoh, the god in flesh, passed from this world into the realm of Osiris. His body was prepared by the priests, embalmed, wrapped in linen scented with resin, his organs stored in canopic jars guarded by protective deities. Rituals were spoken, prayers intoned, hymns sung beneath the flickering light of temple lamps. The king's Ka, his soul double, was prepared to journey across the threshold between life and eternity. All of Egypt awaited the final act, the entombment of the divine king in his eternal house of stone. But here the story fractures, for within the Great Pyramid, the chambers stand silent. No body has ever been found, no sarcophagus of gold, no treasures of the afterlife, no painted walls bearing spells to guide the soul. Only bare stone, smooth and austere, with corridors and chambers that echo emptiness. The king's chamber, with its massive granite beams, contains only a plain, lidless box hollow. Silent, unmarked, this absence is more than a mystery. It is a rupture, the greatest monument ever raised, and yet no trace of its occupant.
Where is Khufu? Did his body once lie within, only to be stolen by thieves? Did priests hide him elsewhere, in secret tombs lost to time? Or was the pyramid never meant to house his body at all? This is the turning point when the Great Pyramid ceased to be merely a monument of kingship and became something else entirely, a riddle. The Egyptians themselves seemed to treat it differently than later pyramids. Those of Khufu's successors, Khafra, whose pyramid still guards the Sphinx, and Menkaure, whose smaller monument stands nearby, bore more conventional traces of burial. They had inscriptions, reliefs, evidence of ritual. The Great Pyramid had none. It was as though it belonged to another order of time, another purpose altogether. And then came the stories. Herodotus, writing 2,000 years later, claimed that Khufu had built the pyramid by cruelty, shutting temples and forcing his people into slavery.
He told of hidden chambers filled with secret passages, of subterranean caverns where the Nile itself was diverted to guard treasures. Were these fanciful tales or echoes of whispers passed down across centuries, even in antiquity? The Great Pyramid was treated with suspicion. To many, it was not a tomb, but a temple or a machine. The Arabs, centuries later, called it one of the storehouses of knowledge, said to contain hidden records of the ancients preserved against the flood. Explorers broke into its passages, chiseling through blocking stones, only to find silence and emptiness. And each empty chamber only deepened the sense that something had been concealed or stolen or perhaps never placed at all. What if the absence was deliberate? The king's chamber, with its stark granite walls, seems less a place of rest than a place of resonance. When sound is made within, it echoes strangely, vibrating through the stone.
Some have suggested it was designed not for a body, but for sound, for energy, for ritual, for a purpose lost to us. If this is true, then Khufu's death marked less the completion of his tomb than the ignition of a mystery that has never ceased to burn. The turning point is not only the king's death, but the silence that followed. For if the Great Pyramid had been built simply as a burial, then its emptiness is failure. But if it was built for something else, then its emptiness is clue. The priests of the age must have known. Within the hidden sanctuaries of Heliopolis and Memphis, they would have spoken of the king's passage, of the stars aligned, of the rituals fulfilled. Perhaps they knew that the pyramid was not for Khufu alone, but for eternity itself, a monument designed to endure beyond dynasties, to speak not only to Egypt, but to ages unborn. And perhaps they also knew the danger of speaking such truths aloud. Better then to veil them.
Better to let the people believe the pyramid was a tomb while guarding the deeper secret in silence. The major event, Khufu's death, and the silent pyramid altered Egypt's course, for never again would a pyramid be built with such precision, such scale, such mystery. Later pyramids crumbled, collapsed, were looted. None matched the Great Pyramid. It was as though a singular knowledge had burned brightly for a moment and then dimmed, leaving only its monument behind. And with that dimming, intrigue thickened. The successors of Khufu looked upon his monument not only with reverence but with unease. Khafre built his own pyramid beside it, but smaller, as though humbled by the impossibility of surpassing it. Menkaure's pyramid was smaller still. Each generation seemed to echo, but never equal. The first, the Golden Age, had peaked. Its turning point had been reached. Outside Egypt, too, the stories grew.
Travelers carried tales of the pyramid across deserts and seas, painting it not as a king's tomb, but as a wonder, a mystery, a riddle in stone. And in every retelling, the absence of the king became the presence of a question, the turning point. Then is this the Great Pyramid shifted from certainty to mystery, from monument to enigma, from a statement of power to a silence that demands explanation. And that silence has echoed ever since. The desert swallowed Khufu's name. The Greeks made him a tyrant. The Arabs made him a guardian of secrets. Modern scholars make him a king of stone and labor. But the pyramid itself refuses to confirm any version. It stands, eternal and mute, a turning point embodied in limestone and granite.
It is here that the story deepens, for once a monument becomes a mystery, it is never again just stone. It becomes a question, and questions spread. They breed suspicion, they inspire search, they stir the restless human urge to uncover what has been hidden. So it was in Egypt's own time, and so it remains today. From the silence of Khufu's tomb that was not a tomb, the path of history bends towards strange clues left in stone, toward fragments of evidence that seem too precise, too advanced, too deliberate to be explained away. The turning point is not an end, it is an opening. The pyramid no longer belongs to a king, it belongs to the mystery itself. And so we step forward, leaving behind the silence of the empty chambers, and into the next part of the riddle, the strange clues, scattered like stars, that still whisper of hidden truths. The desert is full of silence, but the pyramid's silence is different. It is not the silence of emptiness, but of withheld answers. For if we listen closely, the stones themselves begin to murmur in alignments, in dimensions, in patterns too deliberate to be dismissed. These are the strange clues, scattered like breadcrumbs across millennia, leading us deeper into the riddle. Begin with the alignment. The Great Pyramid is set so precisely to the four cardinal directions that even with modern instruments, we would struggle to match it. Its sides deviate from true north by a fraction of a degree, so small that it hardly seems possible with copper tools, rope, and the naked eye. How did the builders achieve this? Did they measure shadows at solstice, track the rising of specific stars, or use instruments now lost to time? However they did it, the result is staggering, a mountain of stone anchored not just to Earth, but to the very geometry of the planet itself. And then the dimensions. Measure the base of the Great Pyramid, and you find more than stone. The perimeter divided by twice its height yields a value astonishingly close to pi.
The ratio of its height to the base mirrors the golden ratio, the harmony found in shells and galaxies, in art and architecture across cultures. Was this coincidence, or did the builders deliberately encode these numbers, preserving universal truths in the only form that could survive ages? Consider, too, its placement upon the Earth. The Great Pyramid lies near the 30th parallel, at a latitude so central that its location divides the land masses of the planet into nearly equal halves. If you drew lines through it, north south and east west, they would cross more land than any other point on Earth, a cosmic center chosen not by accident, but by knowledge. Knowledge suggesting the builders understood the globe far better than we imagine for their time. Inside, the clues grow stranger still. The king's chamber, sealed with granite beams that weigh up to 70 tons, is a marvel of precision.
How were such beams transported from Aswan, 500 miles away? How were they lifted into place with such accuracy? The chamber resonates with sound, amplifying vibrations in a way that feels almost intentional. Stand within, hum softly, and the walls seem to join your voice, turning breath into echo, echo into tremor. Some have suggested it is not a tomb at all, but a resonant chamber, a device for energy or for ritual. The so called Queen's Chamber, smaller and simpler, offers another enigma. Narrow shafts rise from its walls, too small for human passage, angling upward toward the stars. They were sealed at their ends, hidden until modern exploration probed them with cameras. At the end of one shaft lay a door of stone, with copper fittings like a sealed gateway to something beyond. Another shaft led to a void, dark and silent, its purpose unknown.
What were these passages for ventilation, as some claim, or star tunnels guiding the soul of the king into the heavens, or perhaps conduits of a knowledge we no longer understand? And then there is the so-called subterranean chamber, carved deep into the bedrock below the pyramid. It is unfinished, rough, eerie, a room that feels less like a tomb than a question. No sarcophagus rests there. No inscriptions adorn its walls. Some say it was abandoned. Others suggest it was deliberate, a symbolic womb of earth, balancing the heavens mirrored above. Its silence is heavier than its stone. But the clues are not only within. Look at the casing stones, now mostly gone, stripped away over centuries to build mosques and palaces. Those that remain show surfaces polished with such precision that they reflect light like mirrors. Imagine the pyramid in its prime, not rough limestone blocks, but a shining mountain of white, blazing beneath the desert sun, visible from hundreds of miles away.
Some say it was a beacon, a lighthouse of eternity, its summit once capped with electrum, a gold silver alloy that would have caught the sun and blazed like a star upon the earth. Stranger still are the echoes found across the plateau. Beneath the sands near the Sphinx, explorers have detected voids, chambers or halls buried deep, sealed for millennia. Legends call this the Hall of Records, said to contain the wisdom of the first time, preserved against the floods. No explorer has yet entered, but the belief endures that beneath stone and sand, a library waits, holding the lost story of the world. And then there are the scars of age clues, not only of building, but of time itself. On the body of the Sphinx, erosion marks cut deep, vertical, and rounded, as though carved not by wind and sand, but by water, heavy rains that would have fallen thousands of years before the desert became desert. If the Sphinx is older than dynastic Egypt, what of the pyramids that stand beside it? Were they too survivors of an earlier age, adopted by later kings as their own artifacts to add to the puzzle? In nearby tombs, tiny copper chisels were found, incapable of cutting granite. Wooden sledges, ropes, and rollers show primitive means, yet the precision of the pyramid's cuts and placements defies such simplicity. How were the blocks lifted hundreds of feet, fitted so closely that a razor blade cannot slip between them? Did the Egyptians know a technology we have forgotten, or did they inherit methods from a time beyond memory? Legends insist upon more. Ancient Arab chroniclers spoke of inscriptions within the pyramid, astronomical records, prophecies, secrets of medicine and alchemy. They claimed the pyramid was built before the flood to preserve knowledge against catastrophe. Some said the stars themselves guided its construction, that its corridors mapped not only the heavens, but the cycles of ages yet to come. Even the air within whispers secrets. In the deep chambers, explorers reported strange smells, the tang of ancient resins, the breath of ages sealed tight. In some corridors, the air seems heavy, charged, as if the stones themselves hold energy. More than one traveler has spoken of dizziness, visions, or the sense of a presence unseen, and modern science, peering with tools the ancients never had, has found more riddles. Muon scans imaging with cosmic particles have revealed hidden voids within the pyramid, vast spaces never before seen, sealed for millennia. What lies within them? Empty space, structural necessity, or hidden chambers, guarding relics of a forgotten time. The stones will not yet yield their answer. These strange clues do not resolve the riddle, they deepen it. Each fact adds weight, but not clarity. The precision of alignment, the encoding of mathematics, the sealed shafts, the resonance of chambers, the absence of a body, the erosion of the Sphinx, the hidden voids all weave a tapestry, not of explanation, but of enigma. The Great Pyramid is a book written in stone, but in a language we have forgotten. We can trace its letters, measure its proportions, map its alignments, but we cannot yet read its meaning. And perhaps that is the strangest clue of all, that it was meant to outlast understanding, to remain forever a question, forever a whisper of something greater. For the pyramid does not yield certainty, it yields wonder, and wonder is the oldest clue of all. From these strange signs, our story moves onward into the shadows of decline. For every monument, however eternal, faces the touch of time. The Golden Age gave birth to brilliance, but brilliance cannot last for an ever.
And as the centuries passed, the pyramids, once radiant, once unquestioned, entered a darker chapter, a chapter of fall, disappearance, and silence. The Great Pyramid rose unchallenged above the desert, its gleaming sides catching the sun like a frozen flame. For a time, it seemed that Egypt itself had touched eternity, that the age of the pyramids would last forever. And yet, even as it stood in silence, cracks began to appear not in the stone, but in the kingdom that raised it. For every golden age carries within itself the seeds of its fall. After Khufu, his son Khafra took the throne. He built his own pyramid beside the first, smaller but still immense, guarded by the enigmatic Sphinx, whose gaze stretches endlessly eastward toward the rising sun. His reign maintained the illusion of strength, the aura of divine kingship. The plateau of Giza became a triad of monuments: Khufu, Khafra, Menkaure, a constellation of stone meant to mirror the heavens forever.
But already the power that raised them was waning. The building of pyramids demanded enormous resources, quarries emptied of stone, forests cut for timber, ships launched upon the Nile to ferry granite and limestone. It demanded grain and livestock to feed workers, copper to fashion tools, rope and reed to lash sledges. It demanded time, labor, and faith for as long as the people believed. The work was sacred, but belief, like rivers, can shift its course. By the end of the fourth dynasty, something had changed. The pyramids grew smaller, less precise, less eternal. Menkauri's monument, though noble, was modest compared to Khufu's mountain of stone. His successors fared worse. The pyramids of the 5th and 6th dynasties crumbled almost as soon as they were raised, built with poorer stone, rushed in construction, lacking the perfection of their ancestors. What had been a monument to eternity became fragile mounds of rubble. Why? Some say it was economy. Egypt could not sustain such massive projects indefinitely. The strain upon resources, the labor drawn away from fields and families, the endless demand for supplies it wore upon the land. Pharaohs realized they could not command such devotion forever. Others say it was faith. The pyramid had served its purpose or failed it. Khufu's empty tomb left questions that lingered in whispers. If the greatest monument yielded no king, no treasures, no certainty, perhaps the people's faith in stone itself was shaken. Temples, not pyramids, became the center of devotion. Gods, not kings, drew offerings. The balance of power shifted from pharaoh to priesthood, and the pyramid, once the bridge to eternity, became a silent relic of a fading dream. And yet, beneath these explanations lies another possibility that something was lost, that the knowledge which had once allowed such precision, such scale, slipped away.
Whether guarded too closely by priests, fractured by rivalries, or deliberately hidden, the wisdom of the builders seemed to vanish. Later kings inherited only fragments enough to imitate, not enough to equal. What had burned like fire in the time of Khufu dimmed to embers, leaving only the stone monuments as mute reminders. The decline deepened. By the end of the 6th dynasty, Egypt staggered into chaos. Central authority collapsed. Provinces asserted independence, famine struck, and the Nile's floods faltered. The age of the pyramids ended, not with a bang, but with a slow unraveling. The great monuments still stood, but their meaning grew uncertain. They became the haunt of jackals and owls, their shining casing stones plundered for other buildings, their chambers broken into by thieves seeking treasures that were never there. The pyramid builders themselves seemed to vanish. The skills, the organization, the knowledge of alignments and resonance all disappeared into silence.
Later generations of Egyptians looked upon the pyramids with awe, but also with confusion. They remembered the names of kings, but not the methods. They offered prayers to the monuments, but could not replicate them. The old kingdom fell, and with it, the age of great pyramids passed into legend. This disappearance is itself a clue. For if the pyramids were truly the natural culmination of Egyptian development, why was the knowledge not preserved? Why did later ages not continue the tradition with the same precision? Why did what was possible in the time of Khufu become impossible only a century later? It is as if a window of knowledge opened for a moment and then closed. Some suggest the priesthood deliberately concealed it. The secrets of alignment, proportions, and purpose may have been too sacred to share, too dangerous to trust to memory alone. Perhaps they were locked away in hidden texts or whispered only to initiates who later perished.
Others argue that the knowledge was not Egyptian at all, but inherited from an earlier civilization, one that had already vanished, leaving behind only whispers and fragments. When those fragments ran out, the Pyramid Age could not be sustained. The monuments themselves became part of the mystery. Foreigners who came centuries later marveled at them, but doubted Egyptian authorship. The Greeks told stories of tyrants and slaves. The Arabs wove tales of pre-flood kings and hidden records. Even Egyptians of later dynasties offered sacrifices at the pyramids without truly knowing their builder's intent. The age of memory had faded into the age of myth. It is this disappearance of knowledge, of certainty, of continuity that haunts the pyramids as much as their silent chambers. For we do not only ask who built them, but also why that knowledge vanished. Was it lost in famine and war, buried in sand and secrecy, or deliberately erased, hidden away until a time when mankind was ready once more? And so the pyramids stand as survivors of their own fall. They rose in the Golden Age, but endured the collapse that followed. Weathering centuries of neglect, looting, and silence, their endurance is their defiance proof that even as civilizations vanish, the stones remember, yet their survival only deepens the mystery. For what is a monument without memory? What is a tomb without a body? What is a mountain of stone? If its builders' names and methods are lost, the pyramids became questions carved into the desert, questions that outlasted the answers, and in their silence, they grew more powerful. For while the old kingdom faded, while dynasties rose and fell, while deserts shifted and rivers changed their course, the pyramids remained, and each age that looked upon them filled their silence with new stories. Thus, their fall was not only Egypt's, it was the fall of knowledge, the disappearance of clarity, the veiling of truth, but in that very disappearance lies their enduring power. For a mystery that cannot be solved is a flame that never dies. The pyramids became not monuments to kings, but monuments to mystery itself. And from this fall, from this disappearance, our path leads onward. For though the builders vanished, their stones left behind clues strange, scattered, half hidden, and their legacy endured in echoes. What remained after the fall was not answers, but fragments, symbols, shadows, a legacy that still lingers in the desert wind. The kings who built the pyramids faded into dust. Their voices were lost, their tombs plundered, their names remembered only in fragments of inscriptions. Yet the pyramids themselves remained, rising above the desert like eternal sentinels. The winds swept across the plateau, sand drifted, dynasties collapsed, and still the great stone stood, indifferent to time. In this endurance, they became more than monuments. They became vessels of legacy, blank surfaces upon which each new age inscribed its own meaning. For the Egyptians of the Middle and New Kingdoms, the pyramids were not simply reminders of ancestors, they were living presences. Pilgrims came to their base, leaving offerings of bread and beer, small amulets, prayers carved into stone. They no longer built such monuments their kings chose hidden tombs cut into cliffs at Thebes, but they honored the ancient mountains of eternity as sacred. To them, the pyramids were portals still, gateways where the worlds of men and gods touched. Priests and scribes looked upon them with awe, but also with longing. The pyramid texts, once inscribed in hidden chambers, gave way to coffin texts and the Book of the Dead, written on papyri and tomb walls. The rituals had shifted, grown more accessible, but in the silent grandeur of the pyramids, there lingered a reminder of a purer age, when divine knowledge had been etched in stone itself. The priests whispered that those who had built them possessed wisdom, now lost wisdom, they struggled to preserve in spells and scrolls. As centuries turned, foreign eyes beheld the pyramids. When the Greeks entered Egypt, they were astonished. To them, the monuments were not merely Egyptian, but otherworldly. Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, recorded stories of their construction of tyrants, forcing thousands to labor, of hidden passages and treasures. He admitted he did not know the truth, but the pyramids demanded explanation, and in the absence of certainty, stories flourished. The Greeks folded the pyramids into their own myths. Some said they were altars of ancient gods, others that they were the tombs of legendary kings older than Egypt itself. They compared them to mountains, to stars, to temples. In their presence, they felt the same awe that Egyptians had felt millennia before, but without the key to the riddle, they could only imagine. The Romans followed, and their legions marched past the pyramids as they claimed Egypt for empire. To them, the monuments were wonders, curiosities to be recorded in chronicles and admired by travelers. Roman graffiti can still be found on the stones, etched by soldiers who sought to leave their mark on eternity. To them, the pyramids were proof of human greatness and yet, perhaps, also a reminder of their own impermanence. For even Rome, mighty Rome, could not hope to raise such monuments. As centuries passed, new faiths came. With the rise of Islam, the pyramids were woven into new narratives. Arab chroniclers spoke of them as the storehouses of knowledge.
built by kings before the Great Flood to preserve wisdom against destruction?
They said that within were hidden treasures, books of alchemy, secrets of the stars, maps of the heavens. Some believed they were built by Hermes Trismegistus, the legendary fusion of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian Thoth, master of secret knowledge. Others claimed they were raised by the prophet Idris, whom some identified with Enoch, the ancient patriarch said to have walked with God. The pyramids became not only monuments of stone, but libraries of myth. Each culture, each era, inscribed them anew with meaning. Medieval explorers ventured into their passages, chiseling through blocking stones, descending into narrow corridors by torchlight. They wrote of strange air that seemed heavy, of echoes that whispered, of chambers filled not with gold, but with silence. Some claimed to have found treasures, others claimed curses. The more they explored, the deeper the mystery grew. In time, even the stones themselves were plundered.
The smooth white casing, once dazzling in the sun, was stripped to build mosques and palaces in Cairo. The gleaming star that had once crowned the pyramid's summit vanished, melted into memory. The pyramid became rough, its inner bones exposed, and yet, even wounded, it endured. During the age of European exploration, travelers returned to the pyramids with notebooks and compasses. They measured, mapped, calculated. They marveled at the precision, the enormity. Some saw in them the hand of Egypt alone. Others sought proof of lost civilizations, of ancient wisdom encoded in stone. Theories multiplied that they contained prophecies of the world's end, that they encoded the dimensions of the earth, that they were power stations, observatories, or temples of initiation. In the 19th century, archaeologists entered with science. They cataloged stones, dated layers, reconstructed histories. They placed Khufu's name upon the pyramid, linking it firmly to the fourth dynasty.
And yet, even as they sought to close the mystery, new riddles emerged. How had such precision been achieved? Why had the knowledge vanished? Why was Khufu absent from his own tomb? The legacy of the pyramids became not answers, but questions, and in our own time, the questions remain. Explorers scan the pyramids with cosmic rays, revealing hidden voids. Engineers marvel at their geometry,
Their endurance. Mystics speak of energy fields, of resonance, of messages encoded for future ages. Writers spin tales of Atlantis, of extraterrestrial architects, of lost brotherhoods who carried knowledge across millennia. Each generation inherits the silence of the pyramids and fills it with its own voice. This is their true legacy. Not only that they endure, but that they provoke wonder. They are not passive monuments, but active enigmas calling across centuries. They draw pilgrims, scholars, dreamers. Skeptics, all who gaze upon them are changed, if only by the weight of their silence.
the pyramids have outlived kings, dynasties, empires, and faiths. They have stood through famine and flood, conquest and collapse. They have been praised, plundered, feared, and adored. And still they rise, their stones holding secrets no time can erode. Perhaps this is what their builders intended, not merely to preserve a king's body, but to preserve mystery itself. For a mystery that endures is more powerful than any truth. A truth can be forgotten, but a question carved in stone survives. And so the pyramids remain, guardians of a legacy that is not fixed but living. Each age remakes them. Each pilgrim, each scholar, each dreamer looks upon them and finds not answers, but reflections of their own wonder. The pyramids are not only Egypt's, they are the world's. They are humanity's riddle, the question we cannot put down.
And so, as we trace their legacy, we are drawn inevitably to the present, to the modern theories, the voices of our own time, who still seek to explain what the ancients left unsaid. For the pyramids are not finished, they are still speaking, still asking, and our age, like all before it, leans in to listen. The desert lies unchanged, but the minds of men never rest. As the sun rises each morning over the plateau of Giza, the pyramids cast the same ancient shadows, yet the stories we tell about them shift with every age. In the modern world, we have measured them with lasers, scanned them with muons, probed them with satellites, and still their silence resists us. From this silence, Countless theories have bloomed like desert flowers after rare rain. The orthodox view. The scholars of archaeology speak first, their voices steady, measured. To them, the pyramids are the culmination of Egypt's fourth dynasty monuments raised by Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure as eternal tombs. They point to the workers' villages discovered near the plateau, where bread ovens and bones of cattle suggest a labor force of thousands, well fed and organized. They note graffiti scrawled in hidden chambers bearing the names of Khufu's work gangs, the Friends of Khufu, the Drunkards of Menkaure. They point to quarry marks, unfinished stones, and experimental pyramids built before Giza that show a progression of design. In their telling, the pyramid is a triumph of human ingenuity, of organization and persistence. Ramps of mud brick and stone carried blocks upward, sledges dragged by teams of men smoothed with water on sand reduced friction. Decades of labor, coordinated by scribes and overseers, brought order to the impossible. No lost civilization, no alien hand, only Egypt in its glory, straining every sinew to raise eternity for its king. It is a compelling story, neat and orderly, and yet, when one stands beneath the vast stones, when one feels the cool touch of granite cut with inexplicable precision, doubts creep in. Could copper tools truly shape millions of blocks so perfectly? Could ramps alone explain the lifting of 70-ton beams? The orthodox view answers much, but not all, and where answers falter, other theories rise. The lost civilization hypothesis. Some whisper that Egypt inherited more than its own ingenuity. They speak of a civilization older than memory, lost to flood or fire, whose survivors carried fragments of their knowledge into the Nile Valley. This theory finds fuel in Zep Tepi, the Egyptian memory of the first time, when gods walked among men and taught them the arts of civilization. Proponents point to the erosion on the Sphinx, to the mathematical harmonies within the pyramid, to its placement near the geographical heart of the world.
They argue that Egypt did not invent the pyramid, but rediscovered it, that Khufu and his dynasty merely claimed an inheritance older than themselves. This theory is seductive, for it connects Egypt to myths across the globe. Atlantis, drowned beneath the waves, the antediluvian world of Mesopotamian kings who reigned for thousands of years before the flood, the Andean builders who raised cyclopean walls, all perhaps fragments of a single forgotten culture whose memory lingers only in stone. And yet, like the pyramids themselves, the theory is silent where it should speak. No records survive of this lost world, no artifacts beyond the monuments themselves. It is a ghost of a civilization seen only in shadow, but perhaps the pyramids are precisely such a shadow, a shape left behind by hands that vanished long ago. The esoteric and mystical others turn not to history but to mystery. They see in the pyramids not tombs, but temples, machines of initiation designed to transform the soul. The king's chamber, with its resonant granite walls, becomes a chamber of rebirth. The shafts become star tunnels, guiding the spirit to Orion and Sirius, where Osiris and Isis dwell among the imperishables. The entire pyramid becomes a map of death and resurrection, its geometry a sacred text etched in stone. Secret societies have long woven the pyramids into their lore. The Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and Hermetic orders speak of hidden chambers, of halls of records sealed beneath the paws of the Sphinx, of knowledge guarded for initiates. To them, the pyramid is less a monument than a cipher, a puzzle whose solution grants wisdom beyond measure. In this view, the disappearance of Khufu's body is no mystery at all. The pyramid was never meant for flesh. It was a vessel for spirit, for knowledge, for eternity itself. Its legacy is not buried treasure, but the invisible inheritance of mystery schools, passed through symbols and rites to those who dare to seek. The extraterrestrial hypothesis. And then there are those who look beyond Earth itself. They see the pyramid's precision, its cosmic alignments, its mathematical harmonies, and they ask, could humans of the Bronze Age truly have achieved this alone? Perhaps they suggest the builders were not of this world. Theories of ancient astronauts gained popularity in the 20th century, whispered first in pulp journals, then shouted in best-selling books and television shows. They point to myths of gods descending from the sky, of beings of light and fire who taught mankind agriculture, writing, astronomy. They ask, were these gods or visitors from among the stars? If so, the pyramids may be more than monuments. They may be markers, beacons, even devices of communication. Their geometry may encode messages. Their chambers may resonate with forces unknown. Their placement upon the earth may align with patterns beyond human comprehension. Skeptics scoff. Archaeologists dismiss such theories as fantasy, and yet the allure remains. For when one stands beneath the great stones, when one contemplates the weight, the precision, the silence, the imagination
And strains for explanations as vast as the monument itself. If gods walked in the first time, perhaps their footsteps are preserved in stone. The scientific mysteries. Even among scientists, puzzles remain.
Why does the pyramid's interior maintain a stable temperature, cool as though air conditioned? Why do certain chambers resonate at frequencies that seem to interact with the human body? Why does its geometry encode the dimensions of the Earth, the length of the solar year, even the speed of light, if interpreted through certain measures? Are these coincidences, Biro, or deliberate messages left by builders who sought to bind cosmic knowledge into stone modern scans have only deepened the mystery? In recent years, Milan imaging revealed vast hidden voids within the pyramid spaces never before seen, sealed for millennia. What lies within them, empty spaces to relieve weight, or secret chambers concealing relics of forgotten ages, the stones will not yet yield their answer. Between theories and mystery, and so, the pyramid gathers theories as surely as it gathers sand. Archaeologists see labor and ramps, mystics see temples and stargates, dreamers see Atlantis, visionaries see the stars. Which is true? Perhaps none, perhaps all, for the pyramid, in its silence, accommodates every voice. It does not argue, it does not explain, it only endures, and in its endurance, it becomes more than stone. It becomes a mirror. We look into it and see not only Egypt, but ourselves, our hunger for origin, our longing for eternity, our fear of forgetting, our hope that something greater walks beside us. This is the modern legacy of the pyramids, that even in an age of science, they remain untamed by certainty. They are both monuments of history and riddles of myth. They are tombs and not tombs, machines and mountains, questions and answers entwined. And perhaps this is their true purpose, not to tell us who built them, but to keep us asking, to remind us that the past is not closed, that mystery endures, that eternity is not only behind us, but also before us. For the pyramids do not only belong to the dead, they belong to all who look upon them and wonder. And from these modern theories, we step onward into the realm of discovery. For if the pyramids conceal truths, perhaps the earth itself has preserved them.
In fragments of papyrus, in inscriptions on stone, in tombs yet unopened, in texts half deciphered, the story now turns to those discoveries, the archaeological finds, and ancient writings that, like lanterns in the dark, offer glimpses of the builder's hidden hands. The sands of Egypt do not easily yield their secrets. They cover, they conceal, they preserve, yet sometimes, under the trowel of the archaeologist or the breath of the desert wind, fragments emerge, pieces of a story long thought lost. These discoveries, small in themselves, are like faint torchlight cast upon the walls of a vast and endless cave. They do not banish the darkness. They only reveal glimpses, enough to keep the question alive. The first great revelation of modern times was not a golden treasure, but something far humbler, fragments of papyrus.
In 2013, at the Red Sea port of Wadi al Jarf, archaeologists unearthed the oldest papyri ever found in Egypt. They were the logbooks of a man named Mirer, an overseer of labor during the reign of Khufu. His notes, written with steady hand in black ink, described the transport of limestone blocks from quarries at Tura across the Nile to Giza. It was, in its way, astonishing, a direct voice from the time of Khufu himself, a record of men moving stone for the great monument. For Orthodox scholars, it was proof the pyramid was indeed built by Khufu, by the labor of organized workers, not by lost civilizations or gods. Yet for others, the papyri raised as many questions as they answered. Mere wrote of ferrying limestone for casing stones, the gleaming white mantle that once clothed the pyramid, but he said nothing of the immense granite beams from Aswan, nothing of the core stones cut and set with impossible precision, nothing of the deeper mysteries of alignment or resonance.
His words gave us a glimpse of the pyramid's skin, but left its heart untouched, and so the papyri became not an ending, but a doorway. They confirmed Khufu's hand, but only at the surface. Beneath, silence still reigns. Other discoveries have been just as fragmentary, just as tantalizing. In the burial shafts of workers near the pyramid plateau, archaeologists found bones, pottery, bread ovens. They found evidence of barracks and bakeries, of cattle slaughtered to feed laborers, of a society organized to sustain the monumental project. This contradicted the old vision of slaves in chains. The workers were not wretched captives, but Egyptians themselves, conscripted during the flood season when their fields lay under water, bound by duty, faith, or both. And yet, no text explains how they moved 70-ton beams into place. No diagram shows the ramps that must have risen like cities of mud around the pyramid. No inscription records the name of the architect who conceived its perfection. The workers are visible, but the design remains hidden. Texts from temples offer hints, but always in riddles. The pyramid texts, inscribed centuries later in the pyramids of the 5th and 6th dynasties, are the oldest religious writings in the world. Their carved symbols do not explain construction, but chant hymns of ascent, guiding the king's soul to the stars. They speak of stairways to heaven, of doors in the sky, of Osiris welcoming the pharaoh into eternity. They read not like history, but like liturgy, suggesting that the pyramid was never only stone, but symbol. And then there are the king lists, carved into walls at Abydos and Saqqara, which trace Egypt's rulers back not hundreds but thousands of years before Khufu.
They name dynasties of gods and demigods, of kings whose reigns lasted centuries. These lists were not written as fables, they were recorded as history. Yet modern scholars dismiss them as myth. Still, the question lingers, why would the priests carve falsehood into sacred stone? Were they preserving fragments of memory distorted, perhaps, but not invented of ages before the pharaohs, of a first time, when the builders of the pyramids may already have walked the earth? Inscriptions, too, scattered across quarries and tombs, add to the puzzle. At Aswan, quarry marks show where massive blocks were cut, but do not show how they were transported or lifted. At Tura, graffiti name work crews, but tell us nothing of geometry or star alignments. It is as if the practical, mundane labor is glimpsed, but the higher knowledge is veiled. Modern archaeology has added new voices. In the 1990s, tiny robots were sent into the narrow shafts of the Queen's chamber.
Crawling through spaces too small for human passage, they revealed sealed doors, copper fittings, mysteries untouched for 4.5 millennia.
Behind one door lay another, and then another barriers within barriers, guarding secrets still unrevealed. Some say these shafts point to specific stars, others that they conceal hidden chambers. Whatever lies beyond, the stones are not yet ready to tell. In 2017, particle physics brought its own revelation. One scans imaging the pyramid with cosmic rays revealed a vast void above the Grand Gallery, a space larger than a passenger plane, unseen by human eyes since the pyramid's completion. Its purpose is unknown. Was it a structural relief, a hidden chamber, a hall of records? The stones remain mute, the void remains sealed, yet its very existence proves that the pyramid still holds secrets, still conceals truths beneath its ancient silence. Even fragments of ancient writing add to the mystery. In the Inventory Stele, a late inscription now housed in Cairo, the story is told of Khufu discovering the Sphinx already buried in sand, suggesting that the monument predated him, that he was not its builder, but its restorer. Scholars dismiss the stele as an anachronism, a later fabrication. But to those who dream of Zep Tepi, it is a whisper that even in Khufu's day, the monuments were old, their origins shrouded. Each discovery seems to draw us closer, yet also farther. The papyri of Merer show stone ferried, but not conceived.
The workers' tombs show labor organized, but not inspired. The pyramid texts chant of stars, but not of ramps. The roofs show sealed doors, but not what lies beyond. The moose scans show voids, but not their meaning. Each clue is a step, and yet the horizon of the riddle recedes. It is as if the pyramids were designed not only to endure, but to resist explanation. They yield fragments, glimpses, half answers, never the whole.
They remain mirrors of eternity, allowing us to see only what we are ready to see. And so, the archaeological record becomes part of the mystery itself. For though we have unearthed bones, papyri, quarries, shaft, and voids, the heart of the pyramid remains sealed. The absence of the king, the silence of the chambers, the precision of the design, none of it is explained away. Perhaps that is the truest discovery, that the pyramids were not meant to be understood in full, that they are messages for eternity, not for certainty, that each age must puzzle, must wonder, must peer into the silence and find its own reflection. And so the story continues. For the pyramids are not relics locked in the past, they still speak to us. Their alignments with the star are visible each night. Their stones draw millions of pilgrims each year. Their voids still beckon explorers. Their silence still unsettles scholars. They connect us not only to Egypt, not only to antiquity, but to ourselves. From the fragments of archaeology and the whispers of ancient texts, our path now turns to the present. For if the pyramids endure as riddles, what do they mean for us today? How do they shape our modern imagination, our science, our sense of wonder? The next step in our journey leads us into their connection to the present, the ways these eternal mountains of stone still shape the human spirit across time. Stand today upon the plateau of Giza, and you will find yourself in a paradox. To the east, the modern city of Cairo sprawls in endless waves of concrete, satellite dishes glinting in the sun, horns echoing from streets thick with dust and commerce. To the west, the desert stretches silent and golden, dunes shimmering in the heat as if no time has passed since the world was young. And between these two worlds, the present and the eternal, stand the pyramids. They do not belong wholly to either. They are older than the city, older than any civilization still alive upon the earth. Yet they live within the present as much as the past. They are icons, destinations, inspirations, enigmas, mirrors in which humanity sees itself century after century. For the modern traveler, the approach to the pyramids is both mundane and transcendent. Tour buses line the roads, vendors call out, selling trinkets, postcards, rides on weary camels, children weave between the tourists with outstretched hands, laughing, calling, and yet, when the clamor fades, when you step beyond the crowd, when you stand before the stones themselves, time dissolves. The hum of the modern city recedes. You feel the desert wind brush your skin, carrying the scent of sand and heat. And before you rise is a structure so immense that the present collapses, and you are transported into the eternity of stone. People from every corner of the world stand there, their faces tilted upward, their cameras forgotten in their hands. Some whisper in awe, others fall silent, unable to speak. Still others weep, not knowing why, as though some memory older than themselves has been stirred. The pyramids do not explain themselves, but they awaken something. Even in those who arrive expecting only stones, scientists, too, feel the pull. Archaeologists excavate with brushes and sieves, mapping workers' villages, studying papyri, measuring alignments. Engineers calculate the loads of granite beams, the friction of sledges upon sand. Physicists scan the pyramid with muons, peering into hidden voids. Each discipline approaches with its own tools, its own questions, its own hopes of solving the riddle. And yet, time and again, the pyramids resist final explanation. They yield fragments, insights, glimpses, but never the whole. And perhaps that is why they remain so powerful in the present. For in a world that believes it can explain everything, that trusts satellites and algorithms to measure even the stars, the pyramids remain unyielding. They remind us that not all can be solved, that mystery is as eternal as stone. In art and culture, their presence is equally enduring. Painters have set them against crimson sunsets, their shadows stretching across golden sands.
Poets have compared them to thoughts too vast for words. Writers weave them into tales of adventure, of hidden chambers and lost treasures. Filmmakers set their cameras against their silhouette, casting them as backdrops for stories of gods, aliens, adventurers, dreamers. Each retelling reshapes them, yet none diminishes their power. In religion and spirituality, too, the pyramids remain alive. Pilgrims come not only to see, but to feel. Mystics speak of energy fields that radiate from their geometry, of harmonies between stone and cosmos, of initiations that awaken hidden truths within the soul.
New Age seekers meditate within their chambers, claiming visions, vibrations, awakenings. To them, the pyramid is not only a relic of the past, but a living temple still, a doorway to the eternal present. Even in science, echoes of mysticism creep in. Some researchers study the pyramid's proportions, finding in them relationships to pi, the golden ratio, the dimensions of the earth. Was this coincidence or deliberate encoding? Did the builders mean to preserve a map of the cosmos hidden in stone? And if so, who was meant to read it themselves, their gods, or us millennia later? For the pyramids seem to speak not only to their time, but to all time. Their silence is not closed, but open like a book, waiting for each reader to bring their own eyes, their own heart in the present. They have become symbols of endurance. While empires rise and fall, while wars rage and cities crumble, the pyramids remain. They remind us that civilizations can leave marks that outlast their names. They remind us of the fragility of memory and the permanence of stone, and in a world of fleeting headlines and shifting sands of culture, they stand as anchors of something eternal. But they also remind us of our ignorance. For all our satellites and sensors, we still do not know their full story. We do not know how 70-ton beams were lifted, why shafts lead to sealed doors, why chambers resonate with sound. We do not know why Khufu left no inscription, why the pyramid is empty, why its perfection was never repeated. The pyramids remind us that knowledge, too, can be lost, that history, too, can vanish into silence, and so they connect us not only to the past, but to humility. They teach us that we are not the first to wonder, not the first to gaze at the stars and dream of eternity, that others before us, long before, held knowledge that we have forgotten. They also connect us to hope, for if knowledge can be lost, it can also be found. If mysteries endure, they endure not only to taunt us, but to invite us, to keep us asking, to keep us searching, to keep us humble before the unknown. The pyramids, in their presence, are like mirrors. They reflect what we bring to them. The archaeologist sees ramps and labor. The mystic sees temples of transformation. The dreamer sees Atlantis, or stars, or gods. The skeptic sees human will. The believer sees divine design. Each gaze is valid, for the pyramid does not deny, it only reflects, and perhaps that is their truest connection to the present. They remind us that truth itself may not be a single line, but a constellation of reflections, that what matters is not the final answer, but the act of wonder itself. The pyramids are no longer only Egypt's, they belong to the world. They belong to every child who looks at a picture and dreams of sand and stone. They belong to every traveler who feels the desert wind and falls silent. They belong to every seeker who asks a question too large for an answer. In this way, they live in us, in our imaginations, in our story, in our longing for eternity. They connect us to the past, but also to the future, for as long as they stand, they will continue to inspire questions, to call forth wonder, to whisper across time. And so the pyramids remain not just monuments of stone, but bridges between Egypt and the world, between past and present, between knowledge and mystery, between what we know and what we yearn to know. From this bridge of the present, we move into shadows again, for even as they inspire us today, they also remind us of the questions we cannot silence, questions that linger like echoes in empty chambers, questions that resist resolution, questions that haunt us like dreams upon waking. The pyramids are connection, but they are also echo.
And so the story turns to those open questions and lingering echoes, the mysteries that even now remain unanswered. Hovering in the silence of stone, the desert night is clear above the pyramids. The stars shimmer in the blackness, eternal and cold. while the stones below drink the moonlight in silence. The wind sighs across the plateau, carrying with it 1,000 whispers, whispers of questions that have never been answered. For all that we have discovered, the pyramids remain an enigma, not a solved puzzle, but a riddle whose echoes grow deeper with every age. And perhaps it is in these questions, these lingering uncertainties, that their true power lies. Where is Khufu, the Great Pyramid, we are told, was his tomb, and yet it contains no trace of him, no body, no coffin, no treasures. The granite sarcophagus in the king's chamber is empty, its lid missing.
Was Khufu buried there once? His body stolen by thieves long ago? Was he buried elsewhere? The pyramid serving only as a symbolic monument, or was it never meant to house a body at all? But something else. A chamber not of death, but of transformation. Not for flesh, but for spirit. Why so silent? Every other Egyptian tomb is adorned with inscriptions, with murals of gods and spells to guide the soul. Yet the Great Pyramid is bare, its walls mute. Was this austerity intentional, a way of emphasizing form over decoration, or was it concealment, a deliberate refusal to reveal its purpose? An oath of silence cast in stone. If the pyramid held secrets, were they meant for eyes not of its own age, but of the future? How was it built? The question endures, as heavy as the stones themselves, millions of blocks, some weighing 40 tons, lifted with precision so fine that even today a blade of grass cannot slip between them.
Were ramps truly enough? If so, where are the traces of such colossal structures? Did the builders use techniques we no longer know, tools long lost, methods erased by time, or did they inherit knowledge not of their own making, whispers from an earlier civilization, or from beyond the earth itself? Why such precision? The pyramid aligns almost perfectly to true north, deviating by mere minutes of a degree. Its proportions encode pi, the golden ratio, the dimensions of the earth. Were these coincidences, byproducts of design, or were they intentional? A mathematical language carved in stone. If intentional, who was the audience, the gods, the builders themselves, or us? Millennia later, reading their message across time, what lies within modern scans reveal hidden voids, great empty spaces sealed for 4,500 years. What are they, structural features or hidden chambers guarding relics of a forgotten time? Robots crawl through shafts and find doors within doors, copper fittings untouched since the age of the pharaohs. What waits behind those barriers? Is it treasure, text, or only more silence? And if it is silence, why guard it so carefully? Why do echoes linger across the world, from Mexico to Peru, from Cambodia to Mesopotamia? Ancient civilizations raised monuments of stone aligned with stars. Did each invent this separately, guided by universal patterns of sun and sky? Or did they share a common memory, a seed of knowledge scattered after some great cataclysm? Why do myths from so many lands speak of a first time, a golden age, a flood that destroyed and a wisdom preserved? Are the pyramids Egypt's fragment of a global echo? What was their true purpose? Tombs, temples, machines, beacons, maps, the theories multiply, each compelling, none complete.
Were the pyramids ladders for the soul, guiding kings in the Hemasi into the heavens? Were they star mirrors, binding Earth to cosmos? Were they time capsules, preserving knowledge against catastrophe? Were they experiments in energy, resonance, or consciousness? Or were they all of these at once, a synthesis of meanings, layers upon layers, designed to elude reduction? Why did the knowledge vanish? If the Egyptians of Khufu's time could build such wonders, why did later generations falter? Why did their pyramids crumble? Their methods fail? Did the priesthood guard the secrets too tightly, letting them die with their initiates? Did famine and collapse erase them from memory, or were they never Egyptian to begin with, but inheritances from an older age, fragments that could not be sustained once their keepers were gone? Why does mystery endure? Perhaps the most haunting question of all. Why do the pyramids, unlike so many monuments, refuse to be explained? Is it by accident, the chance of history erasing records, or is it by design that they were built to outlast answers, to keep us asking, to preserve mystery itself as their truest treasure? For in their silence, They do not tell us what to believe. They only invite us to wonder. And so the pyramids echo across time, across culture, across every mind that looks upon them. They echo in the myths of Zep Tepi, the first time when gods walked upon the earth. They echo in the stories of Atlantis, of antediluvian kings, of floods and fires that reshaped the world. They echo in the voices of priests and mystics who see in them initiatory temples of transformation. They echo in the calculations of scientists who find in them numbers that mirror the cosmos. They echo in the dreams of travelers who stand before them and feel eternity stir within their chest.
Each echo is different, yet all arise from the same silence. And perhaps this is the true secret of the pyramids. They were not built to preserve one truth, but to create endless echoes. They were not made to give answers, but to awaken questions. They were not designed to end mystery, but to embody it. The pyramids are like the desert wind. You cannot hold them, you cannot pin them down. You can only feel their touch, hear their whisper, and know that something vast and ancient is passing by. And so we remain, as countless generations have remained before us, standing at the foot of the pyramids, gazing upward, filled not with certainty but with wonder. The stones do not speak, but their silence is louder than words. And from these lingering echoes, our story drifts into landscapes touched by enchantment, for the pyramids do not stand alone. They are part of a greater tapestry of sacred places where land and sky, myth and stone, weave together into mystery. The next step of our journey takes us into those enchanted landscapes where the pyramids join a chorus of wonders spread across the earth. The pyramids do not rise from the desert by chance. They stand where land, river, and sky meet in harmony so precise it feels less like human choice than divine design. To walk upon the plateau of Giza is to feel this enchantment, the way the horizon curves, the way the Nile bends, the way the stars above seem to lean down as if acknowledging the stones below. At dawn, the first light touches the pyramid tips before it touches the valley floor. Their summits glow as though fire were kindled within the stone. At sunset, their shadows stretch across the sands like fingers pointing toward eternity. At night, Orion's belt hovers above them, mirrored in their alignment. Earth and heaven locked in silent dialogue. The landscape around them hums with myth. To the east flows the Nile, lifeblood of Egypt, whose floods and retreat mark the rhythm of existence. Its waters gleam under the moonlight, carrying reflections of the pyramids as if they floated upon a second sky. To the west stretches the desert, vast and eternal, where the souls of the dead were believed to journey toward the realm of Osiris. Between them, the pyramids stand at the threshold, guardians between life and death, between fertile green and barren gold, between time and eternity. This is an enchanted geography where every element carries meaning. The Nile is not only water, it is the river of life itself, flowing from the south, the mysterious land of beginnings, toward the delta, where it pours into the eternal sea. The desert is not only sand, it is the land of silence, where the sun sets and the souls of men pass into night. The pyramids are not only stone, they are mountains of order, set against chaos, monuments of Mayat, the cosmic harmony that holds all together. And yet, when we step back, we see that Egypt is not alone across the world. Other landscapes bear similar enchantment. Other mountains of stone rise, aligned with stars, whispering of eternity. In the highlands of Mexico, the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan looms over the Avenue of the Dead. Its base is nearly the same as the Great Pyramids, its orientation aligned with celestial events. The people who built it left no written word explaining why, but the echoes are undeniable. Earth raised to mirror heaven. In Cambodia, Angkor Wat unfolds in vast symmetry, its towers rising like lotus blossoms, its corridors mapping the cosmos in stone. At dawn, the sun rises perfectly aligned with its central spire during the equinox, as though the temple itself is a clock of the universe. In Peru, at Sacsayhuaman, walls of megaliths fit together with such precision that no blade can slip between them. Their weight, like that of the pyramid blocks, defies simple explanation. They, too, stand beneath constellations, revered as gods, and in the British Isles, Stonehenge circles rise upon the Salisbury Plain, Their stones, framing solstices, their purpose still debated, they too speak of a time when men set stone against the sky to mark eternity. These enchanted landscapes stretch across the globe, whispering of a pattern that once, long ago, humans everywhere sought to mirror heaven upon earth. That once, stone was not merely shelter, but symbol not walls, but bridges. Are these coincidences parallel inventions born of similar needs, or are they fragments of a shared inheritance? Echoes of the first time, carried across oceans and ages, each site holds its silence, as the pyramids do. Each invites the same wonder, each refuses final answers. But among them all, the pyramids of Giza remain the most haunting. Their scale dwarfs others, their precision surpasses them, their endurance outshines them. They are not ruins, they are presences. Even worn, plundered, stripped of casing, they rise intact, massive and immovable. They are less like buildings than like mountains transplanted by human will. The landscape around them adds to the spell. The Sphinx, crouched like a guardian at the edge of the plateau, gazes eastward toward the sunrise, as though keeping vigil over cycles of rebirth. The desert beyond stretches infinite, dunes shifting like waves of a golden sea. At night, the silence is so complete that the heart can hear its own beat, mingling with the whisper of the stars. For those who stand there, the boundary between the earthly and the cosmic seems thinner. Time itself feels altered. The modern visitor, clutching camera or phone, may find themselves forgetting such things, their gaze drawn upward, their breath caught by the sheer audacity of eternity made stone. This is the true enchantment of landscapes such as these. They are not only physical but spiritual. They are places where the human heart recognizes its longing for the infinite, where the mind stirs with questions too vast to answer. They are mirrors not only of stars, but of the soul. The pyramids connect us to the present, yes, to tourism, to scholarship, to imagination, but they also connect us to something deeper, the dream that humans are more than flesh, more than time, more than fleeting dust, that we belong not only to earth, but to eternity. And so the pyramids join a chorus of enchanted places across the globe, mountains, temples, stone circles, sacred rivers.
Each is different, yet all sing the same song, that the world is more than matter, that the earth remembers, that stone can hold spirit, that silence can speak. The pyramids are perhaps the loudest voice in that song. Their presence is undeniable, their silence heavy, their enchantment overwhelming. They are proof that landscapes are not only places, but presences, not only geography, but mystery. And as long as they stand, they will continue to remind us that we, too, are part of this enchanted earth, that our own lives, though fleeting, are woven into the same fabric of cosmos and stone. From these landscapes, the story expands again, for the pyramids are not only connected to the earth, but to myths that run parallel across cultures, myths of floods, of gods, of lost ages, of builders who vanished but left their mark in stone. The next step takes us into those parallel legends where the whispers of Egypt mingle with voices from distant lands, telling the same story in different tongues. The pyramids of Giza stand in Egypt, rooted in desert stone, yet their silence seems to stretch far beyond their plateau. They belong to a chorus of stories scattered across the earth, stories told in different tongues, yet singing the same melody, that once there was a time before time, when gods or giants or forgotten ancestors shaped the world in ways now concealed. Let us drift through these legends as though floating down a vast river, a river of memory, whose tributaries span continents. Each tale is a reflection, a fragment of a mirror shattered long ago. Together they whisper that the pyramids are not alone, that their mystery is part of something greater. The first time of Egypt. The Egyptians spoke of Zep Tepi the first time. In that distant age, the gods walked upon the earth. They brought order to chaos, raised the first mounds of creation from the waters, taught humanity the arts of survival, law, and worship. The pyramids, some say, were echoes of that age, not mere tombs, but attempts to imitate the primeval mound, to restore the harmony of the first time. But Egypt was not unique in such memory. The flood of Mesopotamia. In the clay tablets of Sumer and Babylon, we read of a great deluge.
The Epic of Gilgamesh tells of Utnapishtim, who survived a flood sent by the gods, carrying with him knowledge and life to begin anew. Before the waters came, kings had reigned for tens of thousands of years, rulers of impossible spans, like echoes of divine beings. After the flood, their reigns shortened, mortality returned. The echo is clear. There was a golden age, and then a fall. The lost island of Plato in Greece. Plato spoke of Atlantis, a mighty island empire, rich in wisdom and power, which sank beneath the waves in a single night of fire and flood. Its memory was said to come from Egyptian priests, who told Solon the story of an age before recorded history. Atlantis was described as possessing advanced architecture, vast temples, and geometry beyond its time. Some hear in this tale the same refrain as in Egypt, a civilization before civilizations, erased but not forgotten, the Vedas of India. In India's ancient hymns, the Vedas, one finds tales of cosmic cycles, vast ages called yuga, in which humanity rises, flourishes, and falls, only to begin again. They speak of beings descending from the heavens, of Vimanas, celestial chariots, and of knowledge gifted by gods in ages long past. Here, too, the story is not linear but circular, suggesting that wisdom, once known, has been lost, only to be remembered in fragments. The ancestors of the America in Mesoamerica, the Maya and Aztec told of gods who came from the stars and taught humanity how to build, how to measure the heavens, how to live in harmony with the cycles of time.
Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent one, was said to have departed across the sea with a promise to return. The pyramids of Teotihuacan and Chichen Itza echo Egypt in their scale, their alignment with stars, their stairways that rise like frozen rays of the sun. Among the Hopi of North America, stories tell of earlier worlds destroyed by water, fire, and ice worlds replaced by the present one. They speak of migrations guided by star beings, of kivas aligned to the cosmos, of stones serving as a memory of what was lost, the titans and the giants. In many lands, there are tales of builders too great to be human. The Greeks told of the titans, children of earth and sky, whose works shaped the landscape before being cast down. In biblical tradition, there are the Nephilim giants born of the union of the sons of God and the daughters of men whose memory lingers in ruins attributed to their strength.
In Ireland, megaliths are said to be the work of the Fomorians, ancient beings of immense power. Always, there is the sense that humanity inherited rather than originated these wonders. The Polynesian navigators, even in the Pacific, on islands far removed from deserts and pyramids, echoes remain. On Easter Island, the Moai statues gaze inland, carved and raised by means unknown, embodying ancestors whose presence transcends time. The Polynesians who settled those islands carried oral histories of great navigators who crossed vast oceans, guided by stars' wisdom that feels akin to the star mirrored pyramids of Giza. Across all these lands, the pattern repeats a golden age, a fall, a flood, a memory preserved in stone or story. The builders are never quite human. They are gods, demigods, ancestors from before the dawn, and the monuments left behind are not ordinary buildings, but mirrors of the cosmos set upon enchanted landscapes. Is it coincidence that these legends align, or do they preserve fragments of a forgotten truth, shards of a world shattered by catastrophe, carried in myth like seeds through millennia? When one stands at the pyramids, these legends press close. The Egyptian first time, the Sumerian flood, the Atlantean cataclysm, the Mesoamerican star gods, all seem to converge in the silence of the stones. They do not cancel one another, they resonate like chords of a deeper harmony. Perhaps this is why the pyramids fascinate us still. They are not only Egyptian, they are universal. They are not only stone, they are memory. They are not only past, they are questions whispered into eternity. And in this symphony of parallel legends, a haunting thought emerges. What if they all speak of the same origin? What if Egypt's Zep Tepi, Sumer's antediluvian kings, Plato's Atlantis, India's Yugas, and Mesoamerica's star gods are different tongues describing one lost age, one lost people, one lost wisdom? The pyramids may be their most enduring monument, the fragment of a truth too vast, too dangerous, or too sacred to survive intact. As the night deepens over the desert, the wind carries these legends together, as though weaving them into a single song, and as the stars wheel above the pyramids, their light falls alike upon all the sacred places of earth, Teotihuacan, Angkor, Stonehenge, Sacsayhuaman. It is as if the cosmos itself remembers, even if we do not. From these legends, we turn back to the pyramids themselves, for traces of their builders have not entirely vanished. Subtle marks, hidden glyphs, echoes in stone, the faint return of a presence long gone. Our journey drifts now into the return of the trace, where hints and fragments awaken the memory of the builders who shaped eternity in stone. The pyramids seem eternal, yet time has not spared them entirely. Wind scours their stones, sand buries their edges. Human hands, seeking treasure or answers, have chipped, pried, and stripped, and yet, even as centuries erode their surfaces, faint traces remain like the breath of their makers lingering in the stone. When the casing stones of the Great Pyramid were removed in the Middle Ages, beneath them workers found joints cut so precisely that a fingernail could not slip between them. No inscription marked them, no hieroglyph declared a name, and yet occasionally, in hidden chambers, graffiti has been found, red ochre markings, names of work gangs, symbols scrawled upon blocks. These may seem ordinary, but they whisper of something more, a hidden code, a signature not meant for the public eye but left in secret. In 1837, when Colonel Howard Weiss blasted into air shafts of the Great Pyramid, he discovered quarry marks above the king's chamber, crude hieroglyphs daubed in paint. They bore the cartouches of Khufu, leading many to declare the mystery solved, the pyramid was his. Yet even here controversy lingers. Some argue the marks were too conveniently placed, their authenticity questioned. Others whisper that they may have been tampered with, or that they tell only part of the truth. If Khufu's name is there, why is it absent from the passages and chambers meant to last forever? Why is his presence in official texts so faint compared to the grandeur of the pyramid itself? Other traces lie not in writing, but in alignment. The shafts of the Great Pyramid are angled towards stars, Orion's belt, Sirius, the circumpolar stars. Was this mere chance or an intentional signature? The builders seem to say, look not here, but to the heavens for our identity.
To gaze upon the stars above the pyramid is to feel their hand guiding not just stone, but memory. There are stranger hints still. Within the Pyramid of Unas, hieroglyphic texts line the walls, the oldest religious writings known, the pyramid texts. They speak of the pharaoh ascending to the sky, joining the gods, traveling in celestial boats, but some passages seem older, more primal, as though copied from sources now lost. They describe a first time when the gods themselves raised the primordial mound, the same image the pyramids embody. Could the texts be a trace of older wisdom, recorded faintly in later ages and beyond writing? There are the tools or the absence of them. No copper chisels, no wooden sledges explain how blocks of such size were cut and placed with microscopic precision. In quarries, abandoned blocks show smooth, curved tool marks that some claim resemble the traces of machines unknown to history.
At the unfinished obelisk in Aswan, the granite shows grooves as though scooped away by enormous drills, their purpose forgotten. Are these the accidental fingerprints of an older technology, now erased but not entirely gone? In nearby temples, stones bear marks that seem out of place, drill holes too perfect, surfaces polished as if with tools beyond bronze. The Serapeum at Saqqara houses immense granite sarcophagi, each carved from a single block, their interiors smooth as mirrors, their weight impossible to move with the methods we know. Within them, nothing remains but silence. The traces are there, but the story they tell is incomplete, like a sentence with half its words erased. Even sound leaves its echo. In the chambers of the Great Pyramid, acoustics behave strangely. A single voice can fill the space as though amplified, tones lingering longer than expected. Some researchers suggest resonance was intentional, that the chambers were tuned like instruments. If so, the builders left behind not only stone, but sound, a trace that only emerges when breath and voice awaken it. And then there are the maps. The Piri Reis map of 1513, drawn in part from older sources, shows the coastline of Antarctica as though free of ice, a vision not possible for thousands of years. Some whisper that its source was knowledge from a lost age, preserved in secret libraries, perhaps even within the Vatican or beneath the sands of Egypt? If so, the pyramids may be not only monuments, but repositories of knowledge, silent archives awaiting rediscovery. Traces also return in myth. Ancient priests told Herodotus that the pyramids were built in an age before Egypt as he knew it. Plato's tale of Atlantis, said to have come from Egyptian priests, is itself a trace, a memory smuggled through time. In India, texts describe cosmic measurements that align eerily with the dimensions of the pyramids. In Central America, legends tell of bearded gods who built with stone before vanishing across the sea. These fragments may be no more than coincidence, or they may be faint footprints of the same builders, their memory scattered across continents. Some say the pyramids themselves are the greatest trace of message not in words, but in form. Their sides slope at 51 degrees, a ratio linked to geometry, to P and F, to the very fabric of mathematics. Their alignment to true north is astonishingly precise, their base proportions reflecting the sphere of the earth itself. Was this intentional? Was the pyramid meant to be a marker of knowledge, a stone encyclopedia of cosmic truth? If so, then every angle, every proportion, every orientation is a trace, a silent teaching awaiting recognition. Even in destruction, traces emerge. When earthquakes shook Cairo in the Middle Ages, casing stones fell from the pyramids, revealing their core.
The polished white surface was lost, but within we glimpsed the skeleton of their design as though the builders had hidden another layer, a deeper structure that would only be revealed when time itself had worn away the mask. And perhaps the most haunting trace is the pyramid's endurance. Empires rise and fall, languages vanish, even gods are forgotten, but the pyramids remain. Their very survival is itself a clue, a defiance of entropy, a signature too vast to erase. What builder designs for 4,500 years unless their purpose was to echo forever? All these are traces, graffiti in ochre, shafts aligned to stars, grooves in stone, whispers in myth, harmonies in number. None of them alone tells the full story, but together they form a pattern, as though pointing back toward a vanished hand. The builders are gone, but their breath lingers. The cover up, if there was one, has never been complete. And so, we stand before the pyramids as detectives, piecing together fragments. We cannot summon the builders, but we can feel them in the stone, in the silence, in the traces they left. Their presence is not erased, only hidden, waiting for those who listen. From these faint signs, our path draws near its close. The traces gather into shadows, and shadows into silence. Soon we reach the last breath of the mystery, where the pyramids themselves speak without words, and the question of their makers hangs in the air like the final whisper of the desert wind. The desert grows quiet at night, but around the pyramids the silence is deeper, thicker, as if sound itself hesitates before entering. The stars burn cold above, casting faint silver upon stone that has seen 1,000 generations pass. In this hush, one senses not only the weight of the pyramids, but their breath slow, immeasurable, drawn across eternity. Stand before the Great Pyramid long enough, and you begin to feel it exhaling, not alive as we are, but alive in another sense, a vessel of memory, a pulse of stone. The air presses heavier near its sides. The desert wind changes tone as it curls around its edges. One can almost believe the pyramid inhales and exhales, a monument breathing the mystery of its builders. And yet, what remains to be said? Scholars, priests, travelers, dreamers have all come and gone, leaving theories like footprints in the sand. Pharaohs and masons, gods and giants, lost civilizations and alien visitors. Each story rises for a moment, then dissolves in the desert wind. What remains is the same mute stone, unyielding, unbroken. Perhaps that is the last breath of the mystery, that no explanation, however clever, can reduce the pyramids to mere facts. They resist definition. They demand awe. They invite silence. The desert itself seems complicit in this secrecy. Sand drifts endlessly, covering, uncovering. It erases what should be obvious and reveals what should be hidden. For every hieroglyph that survives, thousands more are lost. For every tomb uncovered, another waits undisturbed. The desert is not empty. It is an archive written in wind, and the pyramids are its most enduring script, written not for us,
but for eternity. Inside the chambers, the silence is even greater. The king's chamber, vast yet bare, swallow sound. Place your hand upon its granite walls, and you may feel a faint vibration as though the stone hums with memories too old for language. No treasure remains, no body, no ornament, only resonance. Perhaps that is the truest inheritance, not gold, but the vibration of a mystery. Even the questions we ask are part of the pyramid's power. Who built them? When why these questions echo endlessly like voices in a chamber, each answer reflecting, colliding, fading, the pyramid absorbs them all. It thrives on questions more than answers. Its silence feeds upon our curiosity, ensuring that generation after generation, someone will stand before it in wonder. And so the cover up, if such a thing exists, is not merely human, it is cosmic. It is not that someone hides the truth, but that truth itself refuses to be captured. The pyramids guard their secret not with walls, but with time. Think of how many have stood here. Greek travelers carving their names upon stone, Roman soldiers resting in its shadow, Arab scholars measuring its height, pilgrims who came seeking wisdom, adventurers who came seeking treasure, and tourists who come seeking photographs. All different, yet all the same, each one held for a moment in the pyramid's silent gaze, each one adding their breath to its endless rhythm. It is almost as if the pyramids do not belong to any age. They are not of the old kingdom, nor of the middle, nor of the new.
They are not truly Egyptian, nor Greek, nor Arab, nor ours. They belong to the earth itself, to the desert, to the cosmos. Their builders may be forgotten, but the pyramids remain, guardians of a memory too vast to be contained by names. And perhaps this is the final mystery, that the pyramids are not meant to be explained. They are meant to be felt. They are meant to remind us of how small we are and how vast is the unknown. To stand before them is to stand at the threshold of humility, to accept that some secrets are not to be solved, but to be lived with. Imagine for a moment now that the builders knew this. Imagine that they did not intend for us to decipher, but to wonder, that the geometry, the alignment, the silence were not codes to be cracked, but invitations to awe. That the purpose of the pyramid was not to reveal, but to conceal, to preserve the mystery itself as the greatest gift. If so, then they succeeded. For here we stand, thousands of years later, still asking, still humbled, still whispering their question beneath the stars. The pyramid does not answer, it only breathes. Its breath is the wind in the desert, the silence in its chambers, the rhythm of our hearts as we gaze upon it. That is its language, that is its final testimony. And so, the last breath of the mystery is not revelation, but surrender, to feel the desert's hush, the stone's weight, the star's indifference, and to accept that we are not meant to know everything. Some truths belong to eternity. The pyramids will outlive us, as they have outlived empires, as they will outlive even our questions. Long after our voices fade, they will still stand, breathing their silence into the wind, and in that silence lies the last breath of the mystery. From this twilight hush, we drift gently into the conclusion. The story does not end, it softens, dissolves into silence. What remains is a whisper, a closing murmur of awe, as though the desert itself leans close to speak. Next comes the closing whisper, the final section, where all questions fold into stillness, and the listener is left with the lingering sense that they have been told a secret, though they cannot quite remember what it was. Night deepens over the Giza plateau, the last warmth of the sun fades, and the pyramids, once glowing gold in daylight, turn to silhouettes of shadow, black against a sky scattered with stars. In this darkness, they are more than stone. They are guardians of silence, shapes cut into eternity. One can imagine that in such an hour, the desert speaks, not in words, but in a language of breath and hush, of sand shifting in unseen currents, of wind curling softly around angles older than history. The pyramids are listening, and perhaps, if we lean close enough, they are whispering back. What do they say? Not facts, not names, not dates. Their whisper is more elusive, more tender, a reminder that the greatest mysteries are not solved, but lived with. They murmur of builders whose faces are lost, of tools forgotten, of civilizations erased. Yet they also murmur of endurance, of patience, of time stretched so far that even empires crumble to dust while they remain unshaken. The pyramids do not answer our questions, they ask their own. They ask whether we can bear to live with wonder instead of certainty. They ask if we can kneel before the vastness of what we do not know and still find peace. They ask if mystery itself might be the treasure we seek. Listen closely, and you may hear another layer of their whisper that the line between myth and history is thin and perhaps intentionally blurred, that the story of gods and giants, of lost civilizations and secret orders, may not be meant to resolve into truth or falsehood.
Instead, these stories exist to keep us awake in wonder, to keep us searching, to keep us listening to the stones. The closing whisper is not finality, but invitation. The pyramids seem to say, come back tomorrow. Bring your questions again. Bring your awe. Stand before us and wonder anew. For mystery is not a puzzle with one solution, it is a river flowing without end. In the stillness, one senses the weight of time differently. The pyramids remind us that what seems long to us a lifetime, a dynasty, an empire is to them only a passing breath. They remind us that human history itself is but the blink of an eye compared to the eternity they embody. And so their whisper becomes a comfort. If these stones endure, perhaps we too are part of something larger, something that stretches beyond our brief years. Close your eyes. Picture the pyramids as they must have looked in their first days, clad in white limestone, gleaming like mountains of light beneath the Egyptian sun. At night, their tips capped in gold, catching the fire of the stars, they must have seemed like steps leading into heaven itself, as and though their brilliance is gone, stripped away by time, the memory lingers the whisper of what once was and of what may still be hidden. Perhaps that is the greatest whisper of all, that not all has been uncovered, that deep within chambers unbroken, beneath sands still untouched, secrets remain. The pyramids are not finished speaking. They breathe through what is hidden as much as through what is known. Their silence is not emptiness, but fullness, a library we have yet to open. And so the whisper curls around us, softer than sleep. Do not think you have reached the end. The story continues in shadows, in forgotten scrolls, in ruins waiting beneath the desert. We are not done. We are never done. The pyramids exhale, and the desert carries their breath across the night. To listen here is to feel a rhythm older than language. It is to sense that knowledge and mystery are not opposites, but companions, that truth is not always light, but sometimes shadow, that wonder is its own kind of wisdom. The cover up, if such a word can be used, is not a deception, but a design. The pyramids cover up their truth not to hide it, but to preserve it, to keep it safe until we are ready, or perhaps until we learn that readiness is an illusion, that the journey itself, the act of seeking, is the meaning. And so, beneath the stars, with the desert hushed and the pyramids looming silent and immense, we surrender the need to know and embrace the wonder of not knowing. We breathe with the pyramids. We listen to their silence. We allow their whisper to lull us into stillness. The closing whisper does not end. It lingers in the air. It seeps into dreams. It hums in the quiet of the heart. It is not a revelation, but a caress, not an answer, but a reminder.
A reminder that mystery is the oldest companion of humankind, and that in mystery lies both our fragility and our strength. Tomorrow, the pyramids will rise again with the sun, as they always have. Tomorrow, the questions will return, but tonight, in this hush, we let go. We rest in the presence of something greater than time. The pyramids breathe, the desert listens, the stars watch in silence. And you are part of that silence now, carried gently by the closing whisper into the realm of dreams.